Hey, thanks for joining us here on a Saturday morning. Appreciate it. Real fast, couple of rounds. We're gonna do some quick introductions and then we're gonna go around. We're gonna get started here a little fast. We got a couple online as well. So one thing that again, we're gonna kind of keep it here in this room, but we can talk louder than we usually would. Please do that. So real quick, we're going to spend about 5 minutes just talking as a large group here. I'm going to give you a quick overview. I thought the last meeting that we had just a couple weeks ago, we were starting to get into it. We were having some big conversations. So really the purpose today, we want to build on top of that. What I heard in the last meeting, there's a lot of beefy topics here to talk about, right? So we're really kind of focusing on 1 or 2 main items. So we kind of summarized what we heard over there last time. I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper on this discussion on open space and lot types. That was something that we were really talking about. And if we've got time, I also want to talk a little bit about what does that acreage threshold look like. We're starting to get into that 160 acres. So again, today I want to build off the momentum. I really appreciate you all coming here on especially a Saturday morning. There's a lot of other things we're going to talk about, so if it's not on the agenda, I definitely want to hear it, but we're probably going to put it aside for now and write it down and come back to it. So real quick, let's go around the table. I think everybody mainly knows each other. There's a couple new faces here and there, but I'm Jared Schneider with Phil Horn, working with the county and the planning commission on the project.
Reed Fishpot Land Company. I work with several others.
I'm Tammy Corbett with Whole Board Division of the Land Use Lawyer, and I work with a lot of developers.
My name is Steve Lutz. I work for a developer in the area, Eisenhower Property Group, and I am a land planner by profession. Mike Gravero, City Association.
Fire feedback, City Association on the land.
Phil Zapplin, homeowner here in the area, and also pastor of South Hills Church, which is in my home. Very quickly, for
Buddy Harwell, Long for.
Diane, you have, part of
and we're using
And yeah, Michelle, we put you right on the spot.
Hi, Michelle Hire Development Services.
And I am Nicole Velasco, I'm with Home.
Hi, we are in the planning commission. I propose
Yeah, good morning, my name is Jay Collins with the Planning Commission as well.
Jay, how do you skip you back there? How you back there?
So I'm hiding back here, you know, I'm running tech on this side, Priya's running tech on that side. And then also online, you've got a couple of people, Mary Ann Abrams, who's also with the Planning Commission. And then there's a couple of other individuals online. I know Mr. Brian Slater is online, Mr. Michael Peterson is online, and Mr. Simon Boland with the Agricultural Economic Development Council of Hillsborough County is online. Mary Ann, I don't know if anybody else is online right now.
No, you covered it, Jay. That's about it right now.
All right. So in front of you, let's dive in. What you should have is a quick agenda. We just went over that. We're going to spend some time. We'll think about this. We were going to do the 2 groups that we broke up. It's not a huge group today, so I don't know. What do you all think? Jay?
Yeah.
Girls stay together?
You feel like while we're sitting here, we might,
No,
I think that's, we might do that so we can actually understand each other. Anybody else want? I'd like to think while I'm sitting there.
and one more small request, actually, whenever you speak, just speak directly to the mic, but this thing is a culture. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. I didn't want to let you know that.
We were all required to have that film. We were in county facilities, and we were in county facilities. So I just want to let you all know that, we're all adults here, but again, that is the rule.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so back into it, you should have three things in front of you. You should have the agenda, there's a handout, this is where we're gonna spend most of our time today, going into some of the details. Then you should, for you, those who were here last time, you should recognize the spreadsheet. And so I want to spend just a couple minutes going back through this guy right here, the 1 by 17. Recap. So what we did on the spreadsheet is we got, on the left-hand side, we took the Volunteer Association 7 or 8 points, taking all the other input, and we tried to group it all together. And on the upper part of the table, you'll see kind of the position from the Bond Civic Association, what we've heard from the development community, public landowners, and again, to try to group those topics together, like lot size, buildable area, some real, meaty topics here, open space. And then on the right, we just kind of, in this green column, we just kind of put what we thought we heard last time. And I thought there's some things that we could build on. There's definitely some things over there on the sheet that we heard, we could agree on. And we said, dark sky community. So lighting was something, number 6 that I felt like we had some agreement on to build on. Number 1, the lot size. Lot sizes, I thought we had general agreement on varying lot sizes. I don't think we agree on what that looks like. I figured that out at this point.
For the exact mix or percentage.
Correct.
Yeah.
Percentage or mix, perimeter lots, but I felt like we were having some good dialogue. So that's, again, we're going to focus a lot of our time today on that. We started to get in, and it's all related, right? Like the buildable area and open space. So we're going to focus on number 4. I think we all agree that 40% is too high. But then it gets into what does open space mean? Is it the larger lots? And that's, buddy, we talked a little bit about that in our group. Is it larger, incentivizing larger lots, basically, to retain that rural character. I think we agreed on, Bob not really being a transfer development right receiving area. I think that was something we wrote right there pretty big in letters there. Buffering and screening, we didn't get a lot of agreement on that, but I think we were getting into the larger lots. Everybody agrees on better infrastructure, and then I like what I heard on, I think this is coming from your all group, the agreement on the commercial focus areas, identifying that. So again, there's a lot here, and we're going to focus today on there's lot sizes and then the open space. So that gets us to this handout right here. So you should have a 6-pager, and again, there's a lot to unpack here, but we're going to spend some good time here the next few hours going through. On the first page, you got the lot types, and I want to mark that up. I want us to get into the detail on that. And then we talked about on page 2, open space, what's the right mix? The proposed grades that were coming up with, again, we were saying 40%. I think everyone thought that was too high, and we were going back and doing the calculations and trying to figure out how do you do that with the larger lots. Page 3, and I'm going faster, but we'll spend more time with them. Just give you a quick overview. We started to talk about, and this is the crux of the situation. We got a super simple graphic that my 8-year-old son can draw in here that shows, what happens if you go from 40% open space to 20% open space. We're not recommending that. We're just saying, we'll get into that scenario. Now you got a buildable area of 45% or 65% versus 45. So, what does that mean? Are we, we're going to trend units, have larger lots, or we're going to have the opportunity for larger lots with that? What does that look like? What's that, your point, Steve? What's that mix or that percentage? So I think that's where, again, we want to focus. Page 4, we were really starting to get into this last time. If we get there, good. If not, that's okay. But we're getting into this right now. We can do 1 unit of 5 acre lots, or you can do 160 acres and make 2 units, and there's nothing really in between. So what's that look like? What can you do in between that? And then lastly, on page 5, we got an optional item where in the code today, the proposed code, we're starting to talk about community benefits. If you wanted to get up to the max entitlements, you have to provide community benefits to get there. So that's something on the end. So again, we're gonna spend most of our time on page 1 through 3. And I'm gonna pause there because I just talked really quickly with a lot of stuff, and I want to spend a whole bunch of, I want to get into it, but if there's questions, I want to have a little bit of dialogue with that.
Sure, I just want to say that when this spreadsheet, the stuff that we were talking about last time, for me, in my mind, we're primarily talking about the Balm area, the Balm Village Plan area, as opposed to the North Village Plan area. In my mind.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're focused on. It's still part of our P2, right?
I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to break that out, but I just want to say just for clarification for everybody, when I'm like saying, yeah, I think this is a good idea, or that is a good idea, I'm writing it up for the
We're
Balm.
just focused on, Mike, you look like you got something.
We're good. All right.
Saturday one.
You know, we've got time.
We could do some exercise. Plans, do you have anything to add from some of the discussion, Jay, before we dive in?
I think the only thing I'd like to add is that, and I think we're all there, it's trade-offs, right? I think we're, you know, what was clear last time we met was that, you know, which is why Jared sort of mentioned is that a lot of these pieces are sort of interwoven, right? So we're really trying to, and I think today's conversation really needs to, you know, while we may focus on open space or you know, mix, or they're gonna come back together. So I was just trying to think of these pieces not individually, but then relate to the other one, because I think that will result in, I think, getting closer to an agreement as opposed to kind of, you know, keep them all separate and trying to fight for each one of them, right? So again, that's my own thing, what's the trade-off?
My suggestion would be that we stop having the attitude that working with our developers, which obviously we're here because we want to, that every time we want something, we owe something.
Yeah, again, that's part of the trade-off, right? But
I understand that, but I'm yet seeing a whole lot of this way trade-offs. I'm seeing a lot of urban down here, as you know, our outlook on it. We're just considering how to figure out a big urban plan work in a rural area. But if we want something, what are we going to give them? And quite frankly, bringing an urban land into a rural area is a pretty big deal.
And like,
Right now.
back to what you all said, kind of yield, like why, you know, that's the pull back in, why shouldn't you, you know, if you had, let's draw an example, 200 acres, why should the developer push 400 units when they could do less, right?
Right.
That's what the plan allows.
See, but allowed and necessary are not, that's two completely different words, allowed and necessary. That to me, as we continue to get back and forth, is nothing more than a agreed point.
I think that's where we're trying to come up with a workable solution.
I'm
We
gonna
gotta-
respectfully disagree with you. I'm gonna say that people do have property rights, and I don't think that you can just ignore those. I'm not saying, that, you know, we're here to make the work, but I do think that the reason there's a plan now is because originally people had property rights. That RP2 was a compromise on those property rights, and people do have property rights. And so
I won't disagree with you. I 100% agree. I truly 100% agree with you. I think we're here because we all can agree that it is an outdated bad plan that we're riding on still.
That's component of the trying to change. I mean, looking for all this, I thought, talking about commercial, having an area instead of kind of areas in these neighborhoods, really good conversation. The community benefits, I've never really quite understood or liked, they're very complicated, but I would have liked to hear from y'all like, if there was a focus on who you benefit, I mean, what do you have? You know, you have a mass number of people come to biking trails, you know, is there some kind of path or trail that connects with your commercial area? Like, that's something that's into my head, but in y'all's mind, you know, if you want to improve your, community association around here, I think this menu is just, you ever really feel the impact of this community? I think it's more like, hey, what would make an impact that y'all would like to see happen in your community or improvements to it? And some of these guys, whether they're, you know, some have zoning, some don't, you know, that's your chance to say, hey, guys, we'd like to have this, or we'd like to have that. I don't necessarily think some of these times are going to give the community a impact, or, you know, or if you're thinking long term, what people will be able to use and make feel more community and, in smaller areas. And that's where I think you can differ, is to make it, continue to make it feel like it, trying to make it feel like it's active. Going forward as you do the population.
Well, let's get into it. I feel like that's something we put on the back page, but yeah, I love to hear.
I think it's important to kind of discuss that, what's in every mind, what are improvements you want to see? I know we talk about roads, we all, that, but what are other things that are real, that can have a real impact that you think people would use? You know, that's the biggest thing to me, is you throw these out, no one ever gets to use them, and it's like,
First of all, we benefits, not being from the civic association, they all get from the county.
yeah,
So
that's
we
fine.
have to say, on my other plan, we talked again last time, I said, it'd be nice when the benefits come, that when they're discussed, that the community gets involved and has to say on what they want in certain areas, because we don't want to see the same benefits in each neighborhood over and over and over, we have to have a selection, a variation of different ones at the time that this things change. So that would be something to look at. The community has to have a say with the benefits at the time of development.
Well,
The people who live underground, the few of there in the, what we used to see in there, nice homes on nice lot, little room around. If you know the developers coming, what we don't want to see is a clustering, the house all the same, all painted the same, everything, the trees are all the same. When we do develop, we like to tell our people in Michigan or someplace where we're talking to on, yeah, we have a new development, that's few, we're proud of. We can't say that about it.
Okay. Want to get rocking and rolling? Let's go through it, guys.
Well, I think we talked about that last time, the fact that you did a little, the guys know there was a certain price range that you were building. And we said, well, what about if you go to a higher price range with bigger lots, where, and I know what you're saying, that I have so much, I don't know exactly what word you're saying, you're smart, I know, and some of that was by rule, you can go by, but that's what, I know some of our, could you go to more expensive homes, that you're gonna get a different clientele than, and you're just going by some figures from something, I don't know how to do that.
We have access to markets.
Right, exactly. But I mean, surely, no, I shouldn't say surely, but I mean, you know, I think that was just like we were talking about some of our concerns. It's just like if you put on 19, and I was just talking to this gentleman, you put on 19, and honestly, when I first saw it, I said, this is a because I don't know if these are apartments or something, but it was these gray buildings and yet, and it had all these windows. And I was, you know, something like that, just don't really, like, I don't know.
That's where the most profit is.
I understand profit, so I'm sure it's different.
Well, let's go through it, and I think we're hitting all the right topics right now. So, let's dive in on this first one, and really make sure our feeling. take time to do that. So talking about lot type, what we did is we just, on this first page, we printed out in blue, just kind of blue italics, what was my proposed code. And I don't think everyone loved what was there, but what we were trying to get at, is exactly what we were talking about. Now, trying to provide a mix, if you have to come in, you can't have the same 40 foot lot. So what we did is we said housing type, each neighborhood should have each story. And this is where I will hear from some of our, we talked about land development experts on that, but this is where I will hear from developers, attorneys. This is language that comes from other codes as well, Sarasota. But we tried to say no less than 20% and no more than 60%. So I want to talk a little bit about that range, and we're trying to allow somebody to come in where there is flexibility, but there's also predictability, and then you have a mixture. So then we listed the type. So again, I want to hit on the return percentages. Does that work? And I think Clarence hit on this dynamic going on, this math problem with open space as well. And then we said that there's the discussion at DSCC, folks meeting, which should be wider, which should be larger lots. So I think some of the things I heard from DSCC was the 40-foot lot width. They really didn't like that.
The one thing I'll comment on about at least 3 different housing types. I mean, if someone wants to do all large lots, why would you preclude them from doing that? If the community desires to have 1 acre or at least a half acre or large lots, why would you say you have to have 3 different types? Why would you say a certain threshold, if you're a certain size, a larger lot size, which the community desires, that you're permitted to do all of those larger lots? Because I know we've had that in the RBC North, where actually the developer wanted to build was more larger lots because of the clustering and the forest clustering. And I think saying you have to have 3 different types also defeats that. So if someone wants to do, kind of go under the incentives, the incentive to people that want to do more than half acre lots. And so to me, saying you have to do 2 types is a disincentive.
It definitely, not every site's the same, and there are instances at sites that actually make more sense to back them off because of different costs or different things that change every site that they have.
But I mean, percent, I don't have a objection to like saying you can't build more of it, because once they have that, you have to at least certain percentage has to be the larger lot sizes. I don't have an objection to that concept, but saying you have to do 3 different sites.
There's nothing now.
I mean, I want to come back to that topic. On the flip side of that,
Yeah, I don't know.
on the flip side of that, we're trying to get around with the DOCC and to comment on the a lot. How do you, someone say one, someone can come in and do all work with water.
From my perspective, from the Balm area, I don't have an objection to saying.
The idea of it would be that.
Which one was he talking to? I feel better for once.
I think the whole purpose of what the Balm community wants, is we don't want to see 40-foot lots, so.
So Tammy, you were 100% correct. If a landowner wanted to do half-acre lots and meet the other provisions of the code, I think you're right. They shouldn't have to be 3 different types. I think if the landowner wants to do a mixture of lots that are 5, 6, 7, 8, quarter acre, half acre, that's where you go into show us your differences, show us all of the dynamics that you're going to throw into it. But if they just want to do the half acre lots, there might be that possibility as long as they meet the other provisions of the code, which goes back to the issue at hand with the open space requirement, because while that half acre lot in theory sounds good, the individual who owns that would go, but wait, I can only do half acre lots up to a certain percentage of my open space. I cannot do all half acre lots. Because what we just ended up doing is turning RP2 to Res 2. And that is also something that I think that the board is clear that they do not want to see that direction go. So I think that's what we're trying to work for, is that idea of saying no to the smaller lots, yes to the larger lots. So what is the in-between there? You know, how far do you move that needle in either direction?
I think what we talked about last time is maybe around townhomes instead of 40-foot lots, because townhomes have, I think we were talking about having townhomes kind of having a better aesthetic.
Architecturally, we look at more attractive, rather than looking at a garage.
Right, and 40-foot lots, that's what most of the garage, but that's what we were throwing around last time, was townhomes instead of 40.
How do you feel about that, Mike? We talked.
Well, just, also got thrown around with that is the fact that I'll take you to just about anywhere in the country, there's townhouses that are 10 years old, 20 years old, and it's a new set. Less than desirable place to live. And that's not what we, as Reed said, what do we want in the long run? And what I want in the long run is not 50 townhomes that are now rental properties with trash cars and everything go right along with the whole townhouse community, which is exactly against what she was just saying about who you're controlling and who's going to be. That's the thought of townhomes. Bill, Buddy, concur? Yes.
Yeah, and to go back to Jay was sitting on this seminar too, and you all probably this one, I feel like that's pretty thorough, because you have to, you can't do kind of septic, wild septic on, larger development, so I thought that was something that was, not, you know, wow.
That's a, you're allowed to do on septic? How do
we provide that infrastructure to it, right? How do you, that's all something the commission kind of talked about too. 201 acre lot, and from an efficiency standpoint, that was the reason for the clustering. It hasn't really worked out the way it was brought up. Be able to implement infrastructure on the developer.
Since I'm the new kid on the block here today, to me, the question that I have to ask is kind of a vision type of question. When we're talking about the community that we want to see in the future of this area, give me a word, I'm talking something like I'm driving back down that country roads here, I'm in the Bishoff area, I see the acre lots, lots, that will be that the question type of business stuff. Is that what we're looking at, or what do you feel like the wrong movement matches?
That was a suggestion that similar to Airsworth and Tropical Acres, et cetera, as we're being, as we're discussing, as we're discussing what is or is not doable or profitable or a developer can do or fair for a developer to do, and what the landowner, how much money they can make, et cetera. And so we can give examples of Tropical Acres and Airsworth that they're at no problem whatsoever with building development, and I don't remember anything to do with anybody, going bankrupt for the building back, et cetera. So that's the in between, and we're not ignorant of business, and we're not ignorant of the fact that, they have a right to business as well. Little more than anything else, we are trying to stop what has happened continually, fish off, it's happening now, what's it, Stone, the Hawk Stone, and stuff like that, just continuing, just never ending going on in the county, because that's what we've seen, and now we have the area, we have large land, we perfectly realize our and the landowners have their right to that as well. We're just debating on how much is right and how much is free and how much is because the rules let us do it as opposed to, so that's where, to answer your question, using those as examples. Now, whether or not we can ask every developer out here that's going to do a half acre lot and every one of them, I can't say that. And a building fights for that, but not on purpose. And at the same time, there's a lot of fighting 40-foot lots, so we build more houses. And I don't think that's realistic, so we're trying to get somewhere in the middle. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, you are, it's the same for me.
Is that help?
No, that's very,
I think there's two different conversations here. We are really just planning sites that are.
And yeah, we would like to see.
You know, you're not planning anything less than 116. The whole discussion of the sites over 160 acres.
It's on the village.
Yeah, and, you know, that's a different game. I mean, there. And maybe, you know, maybe the lot size, I don't know what's been agreed upon or not. Which is a different plan.
Right.
I mean, on their sites, they've got more opportunities for, you know, to change around buffering roads and space and doing small things. But for a lot of times, I think it's gonna be, I mean, maybe certain side of the site might be acceptable, but I think that's gonna be you know, what they're out to do. Like what can be agreed upon, or they say is what it is, not what.
But to that point, I'm just gonna try to focus because I think there are multiple elements of conversation. So if we are talking, this part is talking about some of the larger greater than 160. So if we are, community clearly said, the board has clearly said that 40-foot lots is not desirable. So where we started pushing this conversation is, all right, if you're not 40 foot and they're like 50 or 60, right? So if you think about the, you know, which is why the graphic on page 3 is kind of illustrative, right? Because if you say whatever piece of property you have, right? Currently, you're with a 40% open space requirement and a 15% stormwater, it leaves, and again, you can quibble about the little details of the percentages, but it leaves you 45% developable. And by right, you know, you get, with obviously clustering and things like that, you get 2 units per acre. So you're literally, it's requiring smaller lots. We're requiring you to create those clusters. So that's where we're trying to sort of tease this out of, all right, if we were to try to accommodate, you know, without the word using the word greed, but accommodate what's allowable on that piece of property, how can you get larger lots? And is reducing open space one way to do it? So you have a larger amount of land that allows you to have a different mix of, you know, lot types without just saying, you know, we have large lot types and you just have to cut the number of either, you know, you're gonna have to reconfigure it, you might end up having more, you know, smaller lots. So that's really part of the conversation, right? So is there, I want to go back to the first question I want to ask is, you know, do we have a sense of agreement that one, obviously, we're moving from 40 foot to greater size lots, that there is, you know, are we willing to, you know, entertain changes such as reduce open space? Last week we met, talked about, you know, changing buffering. You know, again, it's trying to, it's the same box, the same square, but we're working with a different area, right? And there's a certain number of units that developer property owner is going to want to extract from it, whether or not they maximize or not, that's what they're allowed to do. So how can we kind of find that middle ground in terms of, you know, is it having, you know, larger lots and having, not having the mix, or how do we get there to, you know, meet that need of having some larger lots?
I think we're trying to say like, hey, larger lots, we do less open space, less effort.
I would just say, I don't even know that necessarily, they have to say less open space if you do larger lots, but if you allow a larger, if you, as an incentive, again, to do larger lots, you can count the comps in your open space if you do larger lots. Because right now, in our case, you can't count your comps in the open space, you have that open space, then subtract the ponds, but if you want to provide an incentive to somebody to do larger lots, if you do larger lots, you get to count your ponds in open space. You don't necessarily reduce open space, because you're still getting open space as ponds, within the urban service area, you get to count ponds as open space. So that's the type of thing that I think is a balance between saying, okay, well, you don't have to reduce your open space, but you can have ponds if you do bigger lots.
Is the stormwater always like 15%, no matter if it's 4,000 square foot lots or acre lots? And if you get up to acre, acre and a half lots, you still have to do a 15% stormwater.
This rule of thumb is somewhere between 15, 20, 25%, sometimes 10%, but 15% is sort of the middle. And it doesn't really matter that much about the size of the lot and the size of the impervious surface on that lot. It's more or less all the roadways that you have.
Now, is there any developments going on now, like a Hillsborough or whatever, that will actually come in and do the design, the layout, all the way to let the homeowners do whatever they want to? But you know,
There's only,
It's like custom home builders will maybe, like mom and pop.
so what did that be more desirable than a developer saying, you only look at these 5 houses?
and that's.
Smaller developers might do that kind of thing. That's not what we do. We buy big pieces of land and sell to national home builders, like Lamar and Railroad and Fulton, MIO. So they're the ones who, if there's 7,000 single family homes built per year in Hillsborough County, they do 6,500 of those lots. Yes, there are some one-off developers of custom homes on acre lots, but they're small percentage.
There's also, let's say, somewhere between those, some of the, they've been possible, but just in the urban boundary, they'll do some of the larger lots, like 75-foot lots, kind of thing, and like 30. So there's like,
They've been, like what happened, like back in the downturn, with all of that, on bus hard, very small businesses, and everything that. It's taken up until this, this little 6 block deal down the road, got a few of it over, going like that, there are 20, 30 lots of it, and it's taken, that's been, well, we've been for 13 years. But a lot of the guys that are doing that are gone, they couldn't, they can't support the land costs and the improvements of small builders. And the ones that tried it, and they lost all the land.
Business now, or business.
Yeah.
Those, the big developers, those are the cost of all that. Those are the cost, the custom builders. They're, they're making any money with these stuff.
Yeah, they do it on site, they do it, and that's why most of them are like under like programs, is because they can't afford the risk. Yeah, when things are riding high, all looks great, but the minute it stops going, but there are some of those going work on some of those projects. And, it's a lot different than the 160 acre one. You would get that on like a 20-acre tract, or 30-acre tract, and even a 40, if you got the biggest tract, you would see something like that on. When you're talking 160, you're talking major dollar, major development. And it's outside of the scope of most communities. That's what I'm really getting into. I would say, I don't know really, let's say, when you have a project up there right now, it's happening for us. But I'm very, very unique situation.
The example of Sundance, but you don't see too many of those.
No, I mean, I grew up in like that, But the county, at the same time, the county hasn't really wanted those either. They make it well septic rules tougher, they don't want well and septic and all those communities like that, well and septic. They want water water sewer and make water sewer efficient. And that's
But that's only if it's inside your, outside, they don't want you to have water and sewer outside.
they don't, but they're also making to try to make those things happen. There are, in the south side down here, there's no opportunities. Or unless they're grandfathered in, it's all, you know, from 5, 10, 20. There's no kind of paper one.
My opinion, not like yours, you're not making any money.
Part of
Great, so in other words, all this is we talk about. Basic main thing is the lot size. If this lot size is going to decide what houses you're going to build. You're going to tell your patron what Lennar or something like that. And those houses are going to be just like all of those subdivisions. We have that environment. That will find they're going to be built like that. And that's the bottom line.
I mean, the lot size and size of the home are predicated on trying to meet what the prevailing salaries are in the street, right? And the average family, mom, dad, a couple kids, we're under the wall. So we are trying to meet that line, right? So what you see in your average subdivision, when you drive around there, what was mentioned before. Those are home builders that are trying to provide homes to meet the average family, what they're going to support the bond in this area, some of their neighbors and their jobs around down here. What they look like is the architects, when we start to try to add more architectural features and change from like shingle roofs to, you know, slate roofs or barrel roofs. And like a detached garage, additional, sort of window frame finishes, everything you do starts to add cost, right? And increases the amount that a home buyer may or may not be able to do. Right? So these decisions that you make about lot size have real life implications on ability repopulation, growth in the city.
And so we talked about the last perimeter and that's something that could be done.
Yes, I mean, it's not what we do, but there is a small niche market for half-acre lots that's out there, right?
Are you trying to tell me, right now, you have all these, you might.
I'm not telling you, I'm telling you what.
Well, I see everything you told, no matter what.
We don't.
Yeah, you're right. My question to you is, I don't know, Steve, if you answer this, some of the different, you know, if you got 200 foot, you know, sometimes you have frame, and then sometimes you have pretty wide open space. I mean, if you were able to narrow that up and you stagger on center trees and things like that, it would be a better corridor feel. I mean, is that, in your mind, affordable is to be able to get the extra land and really have more, keep your road corridors kind of.
Are you suggesting that we do more landscaping on the roadways, on our perimeter?
I'm not necessarily, I don't think it's always about landscaping, the density landscaping, I think sometimes it's more on the right placement. You know, I think sometimes the subdivision landscape the heck out of it, sort of like up, you know. I mean, in North Carolina, you grass are out, you know, they got 20, 30 foot row of trees, and you can, screen, and I don't, and I never liked your picture. That was a very intense commercial screening.
Yeah.
But out here, when you're looking at little corridors, it seems like kind of transfer of conversation lot size. maybe put smaller one inside, and some kind of combination. But then you go to, let's go to what you do in that buffer, and you can tighten it up, and maybe not do that level screening, but do some staggered trees. That gives, that kind of gives the visual block.
No, I understand, and yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's landscaping, it's sometimes you put in burning,
Yeah.
with shrubs and trees, combination. You look at the fencing, you have a mixture of buffering and screening to get to the point where, yes, beyond that vertical line buffer, you don't really know what's going on.
And
I think key part of this here, generally, there's lots of cycles, so again, maybe I'll move it on. If it's in regards to the traffic, I mean, that, the more houses, the more people are gonna be having this crossing, and that's just another part of the whole thing. That's not gonna be water.
What I would say, Steve's point about affordability, I'm trying to hear from the community, if you're not necessarily desirous of catering to the first time home buyer. Customer likewise.
Well, and that actually goes back to the traffic center. You've got, the fewer homes we've got, the less traffic we've got, you know, and I understand that. As we would say that, and I don't know.
Or TV recreation.
Income. Yeah, I don't know that have the money, they move the fish off, you know, and so there's people out there with money that they might want to do that, you know, but there's not available. So, I mean, I don't know.
There's a lot we can talk about, obviously, we'll get to it. I want to focus back on stable too, update.
Could I ask you a question on this stuff?
Yeah.
Because since you've been there, there. So, so if a project's say to making life simple. If a project costs me $1,000, in your world, what's acceptable, brother?
a lot higher than you think.
Excuse me?
A lot higher than you think.
Oh, no, I don't think anything, I'm asking, I own a business, what's acceptable? Because you say, if I have to add a roof, then that means I need to pass that to the customer. And if I need to add this tree, I need to pay it to the customer. And so my question is what's acceptable, bro?
All right, I would, that is a development, assuming your business, most businesses should be getting, somewhere around 20% on their asset from current, right? That's not what I want. That's true. And on the development side, I'd say most of them try to get in that range. Some are less, some are more. I've seen some at 10%. I've seen some at 30%.
In some markets, it's very costly.
Yeah, I understand all that. My question is, what's the goal? For instance, when the county bought that property, that they got turned down and, and they made a compromise. And we paid $39 million.
47.
40, okay. I'll be sorry. But how do you want to know? So my question is, so we thought we owed them 47.5 because they were going to lose it on building that development.
They're, that's a little different scenario, but they, I was a part of that, when we were not paying it. But,
I'm not represented
yeah.
in litigation, but I would.
So they, how the UI purchase work on the Milton book right now, and they, on that, there was a credit presented from both sides, and then they needed purchase price. And I've seen a lot of the records for UI in the purchase.
So anyway, there was a profit made on that.
I mean, I landed 34 years. I mean, but the landowners aren't developers, the developers buying land, putting in infrastructure, and they have a 5 or 10 year window to get their money back, and I think that, say, 10%, IRR. Landowners not always looking to be a developer.
The landowners all listed the county, or the developers all listed the county?
Through lawsuits, the other county
So I guess I want to try to, again, direct the conversation back. I mean, I think what I just heard was, Mike, we're kind of where you're going with. You know, I don't think I mean, that's not the purpose of what we're trying to do, is to reduce the entitlement. And that's really what reduce you know, what the two per acre. The 2 per acre, yeah. That's not something that we're trying to do. And so, you know, the terms of the elements are not to reduce number of units per se, but it's trying to actually get a more acceptable form of development with what, you know, the property owner developer is entitled, right? That's really the bottom line. And I understand kind of where you're coming from in terms of, you know, acceptable profit. That is not something that we can do at this point here. I mean, that opens everybody up for county litigation, right? We're going to try to reduce, you know, what they can achieve. I mean, that I know is going to extend this process a lot longer. What we're trying to do is, all right, and which I was trying not to separate it out, I think by default, we're probably going to end up having to do it, is that, you know, as you know, you see on the sheet, right, there's only two properties greater than 100 acres, right, and we all know this. And then there's a lot more that's below that. So, again, I want to kind of get back to the lot size, because those two, if we were, again, not trying to, you know, rewrite RP2 and, you know, change.
That was what we thought we were doing 3 years ago when this started, which is why there was a moratorium, because it's a problem. So if we're not doing all that, so we're just helping them design a development, and then we'll eventually go, okay, the moratorium's over, we thought it was long enough, and we're just gonna go build it, and we're gonna put 1,000 acres, and we're gonna put 2,000 houses on it, and the county doesn't have to do anything on their part and or otherwise. And it was nice talking to you, and it was really great, and it's still a bad plan, and we're gonna use it, and just get ready to have it built right next year with a plastic fence around it, which is not what's out here.
That's not what I'm saying, but I mean, you could interpret it the way you want to interpret it, like, I think that what we're trying to do is, and I think this is where I think we're finding some more commonality, is the character of what is going to be developed, right? And the last conversation we started having was having larger lots, right? That's clearly the desire of the community, is to have a feel that it is not, again, you know, stacking homes side by side and what you see. So that's really what I want to continue talking about, because if we don't get there, I mean, we're gonna have this conversation for a lot longer, and the moratorium is, you know,
Well, why can't we just make the area raise to just half acre lots, and if it's larger than 150 acres, we'll have a fixed problem.
So I think that's going on. I think that goes back to the board, the initial idea of what RP2, WBR2 is supposed to be doing out here, which of course is a now 30-year out of the barn forest. But
Residents have more control on the zoning under that scenario than some of these other
Right, I was gonna ask,
complex rules.
I was gonna ask you, David, you said that the board doesn't want this to be pressed too. I don't know that I heard that per se. I heard all of these people in this room, or most of the people in the community saying, we don't like RP2, we don't want it to continue this way. I mean, I don't speak for y'all, but that was your intent, you wanted something different than what the plan had.
And 8 years ago, 9 years ago, all RP2 up in north got converted or to about 1,500 acres or something. And that was a county initiated amendment to try to do away with.
You're talking top of shoulder there.
Forty Road, all around, William Road, Deshaun, 1,500 acres or 3.
well, it's a difficult conversation certainly to have when I have some commissioners who are very interested in how the open space will be used here. For agricultural purposes, will it be used as environmental land, will it be held in the HOA? You know, so there's obviously a thought had by some commissioners that RP2 doesn't work, RP2 needs to be changed. Not RP2 needs to be changed into Res 2.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're saying that for flippantly Res 2, but I mean, I don't think that you could use the Res 2 concepts and then tweak it for what might be different or unique about the rural area. Make it urban Res 2, you could do some sort of thing where you do deal with the open space and conservation if you want the, the open space to be preserved, the wetlands to be preserved, the conservation easement, or some of those things that the boards are saying, so you could sort of take, my concern is trying to take something that was really complicated and convoluted before, and continue on a complicated and convoluted program of community benefits and clustering and things, when I think what we're all saying is it can be simplified. I think that's all, I think that's your sentiment, it's how to be simplified.
Yeah, and I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, that is part of, the category itself is extremely complicated on the part of publicly initiated and privately initiated amendments over the years. Let's admit it, it's not a very easy amendment to work through. Certainly not for, lay folks who live in the community, even Candy as a professional land use attorney, probably have just read through that first time and said, what is this? Yeah, so I think going back to Clarence's point, part of this is, let's get away from the clustering, because the clustering does not allow you to do what the community has said and what the development community says, yeah, we might be able to work within that. But if I have to cluster it 3.5 to 4 units, well, then you can't do any of that to begin with. So the clustering has to go away or has to at least be reduced. Then you open up that idea of going, what about compatibility issues with the prevailing development type out there, meaning that there's residential uses that are out there. So that's where you go in and you say, yeah, you have to have those larger lots that are set up, or it has to be the buffering and screening that is set up so that you actually work compatibility wise. Then with that issue that you guys talked about, where would the smaller lots go? If we're still going to have RP2 set up to where it has the school, because remember, schools are only supposed to be set up in the rural service area in RP2 and WPR2. You're not supposed to put the schools out in the rural service area. That's another thing that is a decision by the school district of Hillsborough County, like other types of facilities that we have out here with water and sewer. That's why you end up having a school come into this land use, because the developer is to provide water and sewer to their site. Therefore, there's the ability to put a school in there, a library in there, a community center like where we're sitting. There's a lot of different ideas and thought that went into creating communities in that RP2. And we're still working within that idea. Can we create communities within RP2 for the folks that live out in the rural area? Because it's the only area out here that you get that, right? We hear it from the community saying, we don't have, certainly there is one home, but we get that conversation of, we don't have libraries, we don't have parks, we don't have all these things. This is the area where you're supposed to end up having some of that in these land uses. So if we're going to have those types of infrastructure conversations, I know part of the infrastructure conversation we always want to have on roads, but there's a lot of other infrastructure that goes into working for your community, like those schools and other things. That's what we're still working with. So I think that's one of the things that we have to keep working with the complication of it is within those community benefits, because we wanted to actually try to make it a more easy process for the developer and for the community to be able to understand where will the schools go And how will the schools be serviced? Just like what we're having right now with the issues of how people access some of these schools in the sites because they don't have the transportation improvement to get into the site. So I think there's a lot of good work that goes into these communities. I think what we're doing is, as we say, nibbling around the edges, but those are the edges that you guys are interested in, because that nibbling around the edges is how it actually relates to you living next door, how it functions to you, what you see next door to it. And you want to be able to have those larger lots next door. You want that screening and buffering next door. So I think that's good that we're getting to. We just need to make sure that we actually say, what are those lot sizes? What are the percentages? Do we get to say, yes, that the open space goes down to 30% or 25%? That open space goes in and becomes, just like we were talking about, the HOA, agricultural uses and whatnot. So I think we're moving in that right direction, but I think we do need to have that conversation of saying, this is how this will work going forward. Sorry, I probably dragged that on about 2 minutes long, 2 minutes long.
I think the last one.
You're supposed to give me a nod.
Just fine. And truly, all due respect, when this came out initially from Stacy White, because I had the pleasure of sitting in his office because I was livid, to be honest with you, livid, because when this thing started, if you remember, it was started as RP2, period. And within a month, it was, we're going to do this small area and this Lyrona area and forget about the rest. And a lot of the complication that we're dealing with right here is because this is all about postage stamp called law, as opposed to a real problem in our community as a you know, so we're trying to massage it for what's the percentage of problem of Hillsborough County. Now, that's a lot of what's going on right here is we're trying to massage that piece because it's big land that's left. Because without that, we wouldn't even know it. Well, can we not agree on that?
I mean, I guess that was sort of what I started to look at with Jay was doing the discussion, and we have this document that we handed out. I mean, we're talking as though there's vast canvas of land that we're dealing with. It's really.
Talking about the green area, it's on, or it's.
Even if you took the north area, I mean, if you look, there are 0 acres between 162 and 320 acres in the north area. And there's two parcels that are between 50 and 160. The rest are all small parcels, and they don't qualify under our current RP2 rules to develop at 2 units the acre. So there's only certain property, there's a very finite, limited number of properties. This is what we're all talking about, and we going to apply.
We agree, by the way.
So-
We agree that and unfortunately, this constant conversation that is going on has to do about what our quality of life, which goes right back to the county and it goes right back to the infrastructure because of that 4-lane road out there and, you know, and the sidewalks are in and all that kind of, we wouldn't be happy to have this conversation. And we don't not know that. But then we also got in a fine, excuse the language, pissing contest. Once this one across here, the road was approved, you know, and no disrespect to you either, but Jeff fought every inch to get every cent he could possibly get out of that. And we were seriously, we never did this. We had just started and pretty much just got blown out of the water right out of the beginning because we didn't know how to do it and it got approved. This is what I mean, got approved because of it. And that's when we went, that's really what started.
I want to say around with seeing different. Well, no, it actually very helpful, otherwise I wouldn't get anything done. Let's just say, and they're not at this time, let's just say you're to get one of these to decide what. What incentives would you ask to come to get what you want? What do you want them to agree to?
If I have to give up smaller lots, I'd like to get rid of something else. I'd like to get rid of the clustering requirement. If I've got to take two larger lot sizes, I'm not gonna be able to do the clustering. I can't make it work.
So I'm not sure I'm saying question.
I'd like to say something about the smaller lots. They said you give up smaller lots, you want to be, you're gonna charge more money. You're not gonna lose money.
No, that's not necessarily.
I want to say that, what's starting a lot of crap out here is we went to speak in front of the commissioner about me getting setback on the piece of property over here 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, and we got shot down because we didn't know we had to file some crap to talk, to try to get my life to get a setback. So that's what started a lot of it, you got to pay for it now.
Oh, yeah.
But you were to get rid of cluster requirement,
Right.
and what else?
The on-site commercial. It doesn't work.
I think we kind of, yeah, I like it.
And I like flexibility on perimeter offering. If I do, I don't have a problem with more landscaping.
I was gonna ask what you need.
So the trade-off is reduced or legal actual, 200
Yeah,
on the runway.
that's a double-edged sword, I've learned. Because I've done some projects, I'll let it natural, and once it's big hours behind it, it doesn't look good, what you think? I mean, I'm.
No, we appreciate your experience.
That's why I
I've done that with people who did that come back and saying, hey, thanks. Because you got like a jungle, you know, but when the jungle's gone, it's what's left is really what it's pretty thoughts.
Anything but farms.
Yeah,
Farms is just.
I'm not a big firm fan, personally. And I'm not a big firm fan. They, I don't think all the small shrubs, I don't tree. Great myrtle tree.
You know, don't build it up to the edge, you find out where the buffer is, leave it natural grade or whatever in there. So that way you got the water come off the street and not hit the garden back up. Because I mean, the ditch back there is not, we don't have ditch, we don't have bridge. So where's it gonna go? It's gonna be bounce back out to the street. Then like I said, I'll show you pictures all the time.
I like where this conversation going, another thing you guys have been concerned about is just the predictability, 250 feet. If you have that stream, you're talking about, that's where we're trying to get some kind of predictability. Could it be 250? You have to be this.
I got no buffer, 0. We went to ask for buffering, we didn't do the right paperwork, we talked. Like, there.
Those
I hope. I guess, well, that crossing there, but the, buffer.
That's something that's required.
Correct.
Yeah, but if you have a road there, then you don't have to do it.
So that's obviously going to be our frustration of that predictability, right? So how, absolutely.
And yes, and that's correct, but it was, but the 250 was required. Okay. No. Just please don't, it's required, and you asked for 50. You didn't ask for 100, you didn't ask for it to be cut in half. Okay, it's 250, please give us 50.
I don't know that particular case at all. I don't know that specific case at all. What I have seen on the 250 buffer, in real world, you own the land zoning. I got land there, and I go meet with you, and I say, hey, I'd like to have this buffer reduced, I'll plant some trees, do what you like. You know, I'm not gonna take it for it. And people will say, yes, okay, that makes sense. They get money for reducing the buffer, you know, but I've seen it happen multiple times. Because some people care more about it than others. I think as a community, it's more, I always find it more the corridors, roadways, and you gotta respect your neighbor too, that leads to options to work with your neighbor. And if you say, hey, no, forget it, you keep 250.
I would like to say, so
But if you say, hey, no, I think something.
And you're talking about, and
It's
you're talking about,
a good compromise.
there's a difference in the buffer I'm talking about, is because I live there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna look at that house moving off. I live there. I gotta put up with the development from you 500 miles of property.
You know, there's no sense in making it for me, but again, what brought us here in the first place is, I mean, just look across the street, right there. And it's got 50-foot buffer rights with 8-foot fence and allowed 35-foot tall houses. Does that look like where we live? I mean, be fair, turn Sweet Rock, don't listen to anybody. There's a bunch of groups around here that live here. Does that seem like that looks like bomb, to have 40-foot lots and houses that are 35 foot tall? Or like an 8-foot, like an 8-foot fence?
I mean, it's tough, it's so much stuff. He'd argue, so you have mock negotiations right now. You know, you don't want, and the fencing thing, okay, I know most people do these fences, I try to do on some stuff I work on, about like, I don't want to walk declares that you would, have any person. But he's already known, he's not gonna lose anything. Tell him, hey, I want, you know, what do you want, let me do this, right, what we agree to, right? You know, I don't know what you see, what you
Again, I'm just telling you why we got here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's why, so it's been like this since.
But it's a good example to use, because it's hard to negotiate on a site plan developed that doesn't have rights yet, or doesn't, well, nothing, you're not losing anything, you're not losing anything by trying to agree something. You can voluntarily agree something.
Well, if we were starting over, you know, exactly.
Yeah.
What kind of fencing, would it be a split rail, looking sort of after fence, being white,
Okay,
and then what kind of landscaping material would look nice?
that's not.
That again, this is, how long have you been doing this?
35 years.
Okay, we're about 3.5.
I know, so those are the things, basically, when you're working on zoning, you're meeting with the community, you're talking, just kind of hearing. And that's kind of what we here to say, hey, I don't want fence, I don't want a big foot fence, I want split rail fence with it. And most times, they would probably say, you know what, you're good with that, we'll make it happen.
And I don't know, Steve may know, Michelle would definitely know. If I put in, if the plan says I got 6-inch trees, and I just want to go out there and put 12-inch trees.
So that's different.
Exactly what y'all are talking about. All of a sudden, it's that issue of going, how can I screen the 35-foot house quicker? Is it that I can throw out some larger trees or something to that effect? But that is, as you all are saying, you know, a conversation between gentlemen, you know, an agreement between gentlemen. But again, someone somewhere could see a plan and go, this isn't what was on the,
That's what. I appreciate that. I think that impacts on those kind of things for the future, and a lot of those.
And I think it's here because there's a moratorium, and they can't do anything right now, and because the fact of the matter is, at that period of time, we had a commissioner group that approved anything and everything, and when I sat with Jeff at a coffee shop, and got 0 done out, it didn't have to. It was all on his side, he didn't have to, okay? And so now we're here because of that, because they didn't have to, so there was no compromise of whether I'm gonna make it 50 foot or put a fence in or otherwise. That's what it says, that's what I can do, that's how I can put in those houses. Thank you for talking to me, but I gotta go now.
I think
That was what we do.
right now, it's trying to make that point, like, you can't change what happened, but right now, you can say, I would rather see something different, and then we get the monthly to see here, we get the back in where it works. Right. I truly.
I appreciate your mediation tonight, I really do appreciate your mediation.
Yes. Yeah, I guess this pretty well. We're in short order. We're trying to take all of that.
and really put something together that's never happened. Everybody's gonna agree on every single point. But we're gonna have to take this in short order, and the moratorium is what, Jay? So we got commission meetings and hearings, so I like when you were talking. I mean, I think we all said, kind of agree here today, clustering requirement. We have to take a look. We heard that pretty loud and clear. I mean, the on-site commercial, I just want to hear if anybody disagrees with that. The on-site commercial, the flexibility we were sort of getting to on the buffering, and, but yeah, we talked about that, the total is quite there. But it, allowing additional screening, instead of 250 foot buffering, I think that's something we were just saying, that's something that needs to be worked on.
I still got a question about, King brought up about the 21 to 49 acres. There's 15 parcels, 433 acres that, it's not like that, it's not going to be developable, but it can be if it's aggregated.
Yeah, that was a good decision.
Yes, and what you're seeing is those people will aggregate because they have no problems. Right. And that's where you have another opportunity if you want to see that happen.
But aggregation, I'm saying, you can't put those piece of property down the street that don't even connect to it, it has to be connected, correct?
That's the way they proposed. Or
That's not the way it's done.
It's not how it's, okay, it's right. It's showing.
No, there's a couple different options in the aggregate area. If you're a certain size, you do need to be connected, literally with like a vehicular connection. You can do smaller ones, I think as low as 50 acres. And at that point, you have some flexibility in providing the commercial. Whereas when you aggregate, you still have that commercial component to comply with, and some of them can't comply with it. So, it's kind of a project that doesn't go anywhere, and some of them can. But the aggregate's a little different because they're allowed to draw commercial from within and outside of 2 areas, 2 miles, whereas in the non-aggregate area, if you seek a waiver to the commercial, it has to be 1.5 miles from your site, and it can't be in another planned village. So the on-site commercial requirements are a bit more flexible in the aggregate area.
The aggregated area is the, where it's not. In the
It shows you guys 57 under acres, so.
I think they're pretty counting. Well.
What's that? Sorry.
Can I ask a consensus? Both us and them, do we agree on the fact that the whole idea of what commercial inside was for never worked?
Yeah.
Can we agree with that? Yeah, but no. Yeah, inside the community, let's face it, the fiber required throughout the county, we can go, we can drive all from Gibson, Riverview, Bloomingdale, all that, and see that it's nothing, if it's not selling beer, wine, or liquor, it's a revolving store, because the owners, we've seen fitness, North Fish Off, and it's cut because it doesn't, the community can't support, the idea was to keep people off the road, and it doesn't work. So
But here's what I say, it's a lack of concept of, you keep the internal traffic, more internal. But like I say, but we proved it, but they here was an acceptable, Joe just got the, it's like, that would be number one thing.
Right.
We got one decision for neighborhood services.
Actually, right now, daycare is not considered a retail, you can have planned business. And I've tried to, and I've gotten approved to go back into various planned villages around town. And gone to the Board of County Commissioners, please let me allow a daycare center to be counted towards my downtown retail. And over the objection to staff, which is I can't do that. Board of County Commissioners, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, they approved it. They approved it. Most of the
Something we can agree on, right? You know, so that, and that's the point of what we're trying to get at, is what can we agree or not agree? So I don't think, unless you're gonna say, I don't want to speak out of turn, otherwise, if you're asking, stop making me put 5 acres of 1,200 square foot little stores in here that nobody's ever gonna use. You know, that, I believe we give that up, don't you?
Sure.
No. We're asking for compromises, because we're not, somebody, it's not working, we know it doesn't. You know, we've lived here long enough to know it doesn't work. And because that's because that's the other side of our argument, is everything you want to talk to us about is inside of the community. I don't know where all of you live, okay? I don't know, I don't know where all of you live, but if anybody wanted to.
That's, sorry, Sean's brought up a good point. Do you feel, yeah, obviously commercial, do you feel, allowing your uses if you want to, of the daycare, is that something that you all support? Is the location criteria? I'm sorry?
The one point I was bringing up to Jared is, and I know you guys are familiar with this, in the county, you're required to meet locational criteria for non-residential uses, and RP2, kind of one of their incentives is they don't really meet that. But I think everyone has always thought something internal to a community can be very beneficial. The sizes that he's talked about are pretty difficult. So I guess I wanted to know if a developer came along and wanted to have a little pocket of an office building or a daycare, can that still be possible without them meeting locational criteria like they do
We
now?
would think it would be great if it was actually, as we're talking about daycare, a usable item. But to tell these guys, and because we agree with you, that you have to build, a 1,200 square foot unit because you have to, but please appreciate this. So far, our experience has not been positive, and so every time, what we've seen, including the variances, which like God and Blair County doesn't just remove that, other than when it's realistic for the property, as in, is it gonna go wildlife and or otherwise, that you can just, do it endlessly without that being got rid of. We're just, all we've seen is abuse of the county rules.
I think there should be mandatory commercial a little bit, but it needs to be not stuck in the middle of the thing, where anybody outside the community can't get to it. I think it needs to be on the edge, maybe next to a modern road, but like the daycare on the edge. The people in that community need to go get to, from the community, not have to go on the big road to get to it.
Yeah, and that's design development that you're talking about there. Right now, we're talking about the flower park. And again, it's no disrespect, but all we've seen is abuse of the rules for the sake of what can we put more of. My first thought here, when you guys asked it, can we not put the road here and turn this into cul-de-sac? The first thing I said to Buddy is, I can't wait to see the variance of the land that's left out here. And I'm thinking what we can now build on that to add to our profitability to this property. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's the first thought in my mind. If you stop it right there, that just cleared how many acres up to there, because now that road it's gone. That's what goes through our head, because that's been our experience of taking advantage of every possible rule for the sake of profit.
Yeah.
What?
Point on this chart, it's confusing to me because in one place we're looking like maybe we're talking about 10,000 acres, but in other places it's maybe if you add up this way and this way, you don't get to 10,000 acres. So just for clarification, I think it'd be helpful for us to understand that, right? 10,000 acres times 2, that's 20,000 units. If it's 1,000 acres, then it's, 2,000. Just to understand order of magnitude, and I know application stuff, but I find the numbers to be a little bit confusing.
On the left here, we're kind of going back to, and what's 3.5 now?
Yes.
What if you lowered it? What would you do? Here. No,
Want to meet it? Zero it, no, can't.
yeah.
Come on. approval for 1,000 lots. How many of these lot size do they have? I'm uncertain.
Rather than the clustering that we're forced
I
to.
mean, that is gonna throw me to death over the next, right? Once we agree on some standards. Everybody will know what. I've got it next.
Do X percentage of X lot size, Y percentage of Y lot size.
And that's what we're hearing from cases, yeah, there's a lot of clustering lines. Yeah, again, reserves about and clustered infrastructure.
And make us go to smaller lots.
And again, just like the commercial thing, we're proving that it's not working, which is why we're all sitting here. And I want to give you one example of where we see in the abuse, because these are two houses, and because they had to be variants, you know, I mean, that's in there now. The driveway was on this side, and this house, the driveway was on that side. And to me, that's again, abusing something that's in there, you know, and then wondering why the community has a problem.
Right, but what's there, what's in the code now doesn't work either, so I think that's like seeing people asking for relief from it, so. If you
Correct.
the point what we're trying to do here.
Correct.
That will work.
So why not all the 20% to 60%, doing 3 different lot types would be acceptable to 33% each side lot? So 30%.
But I think you were talking about not doing 3 lot sizes, we're saying.
You want less, you want 2 lot
You know, I'm just talking out loud, right now,
lines.
it's really restricted before you fifty right now. If there's 6,000, 7,000 building permits per year, half of it is capital.
Yeah.
Right, so if I say 30, I'm missing some of the mark.
You're missing on here.
Yeah, so if I go to 60 as opposed to 30, they sell, but they don't sell it back. Right, so time is money. Yeah, right, so. Now, I gotta be careful about.
I know that it.
Let's go over a different next.
See, when they 40 and 50 foot lots because of the clustering ratio that you have in one home here, I mean, are you also doing res 4s, res 6s? Because by default, in WDR2 and RP2, you're gonna lean towards 40s and 50s, the clustering ratios. Right. So if the clustering ratio is gone away, do you think your home buyers, JDMI, you know, the all and stuff, they'll be able to go, yeah, of course, in 60s and 70s, we can work with that too.
No, because the price points are higher. Because it costs more to buy a 60-foot wide lot, costs more to buy a 70-foot wide lot. And if you then have a wider lot, you're paying for that lot, you're gonna build a bigger house on that lot. So the house is bigger. So your price point's gonna go from, you know, 40 to 50, between 250 and 350. Now you start talking about 300 to 500,000 square feet. $500,000 for that house. And you're starting to price yourself out of the market.
Yeah, why do you have to build a bigger house? Just there's a lot. Yeah, let's say, my first home here in Bloomingdale was, I purposely bought a corner, so I had some land, and it was 65 by 90. My house was 1,417 square feet. So I won't buy that argument that the difference of 10 feet wider, if a person is going to pay 300,000 for a house because they now want 1,800 or 2,000 square foot house, it's because they went to Europe and went, here's the 3, and I picked the 2,000 square foot house, not the 1,400 square foot house. So no, I won't, that part of all of it we've been doing, I won't agree with giving people a little more grass is going to knock you off the market. Take Lenore right now, they're looking to put 100 houses out here, and the lot's only going to be 60 and one will sign up for tomorrow because they'll be sold in that.
Also, Russ, there's a couple sections in there that 8,000 minimum, 8,000 square foot lot, so. I mean, it is in some of the things around here, so they have to do 4,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, too, that you think what the feedback, at least again, for the long area seems to be, that they don't really desire to have cater to the market with the 40, 50 market. That's not what they desire for the team.
Yeah, I think the 40 and 50 quote is gonna be the first time buyer. Once say they've been there for 5 to 10 years, to get that up with all the traffic and kind of the neighborhood stuff. Then they're gonna be, then they got a couple in there, then they come up to a roll, buy a bigger lot, bigger house, have a place for their kids to grow up. If there is bigger lots.
They would have to be there. The market, so they would have to be there
Well,
first.
I think at this point is if you allow the 40-50, then that's what's gonna get developed, right? But if you don't allow
You
that.
don't give them an option. I mean,
Well, you've got all the people from New York State coming down, and they want something bigger, so.
or-
They're used to paying
40,
millions of dollars.
40, 50, no, for your opinion.
Actually, that's
You're
right.
gonna buy whatever you have, whatever you have, you're gonna sell, no matter what the price is. Right now, that can change in the near future. Right now, they're buying it, you have.
So, I mean, so again, we had just talked of the range of flexibility. And that's part of why instead of doing 33, 33 or whatever the standard is, no, it's just keep going out. Yeah, no, I know, so again, trying to tease out, this conversation of kind of pause along, so, you know, is having flexibility, whether it's 2060 or whatever the number is that concept acceptable?
It is, as long as I go to larger lot sizes, I get the discussion on, the perimeter buffer area, or you're not in open space, like town pond, or open space. It actually trade off that talk about in for our needs, right? So I think the percentage actually is pretty large with respect to if we're going to 50-foot minimum. That lot size is then the wheelhouse for the element. What the average family of four can afford. Exactly what that number is, I don't know, but that ought to be a large percentage of the mix. And it's a smaller percentage than mandatory for a larger lot size.
But then you go get your columns, if you had them build 50-foot lot, 40-foot, you couldn't sell them all?
No,
You couldn't sell them all right now?
they're trying to get out of this,
Go ahead. If you do a half acre lot, you want 40-foot, 50-foot wide lot with half acres, so what's that gonna be? 900 feet? For half acre lot. Yeah, it's not gonna sell.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
And I think you would end up having a percentage range. So it would be 20 to 60, 20 to 60, 20 to 60, which would allow the developer the opportunity to say, I want to do so many at 6,000, so many at 7,000, that way you move up and down the range. If you specifically say it's a third, that prescription is going to be very difficult, right, for people in need.
Yeah.
I would play a little bit of devil's advocate from the community side, if they're saying half acre, half acre, half acre. If you're talking about like 6,000 feet.
Right.
Seems like that's still pretty far apart.
Yeah, but do you think we're going to get them to agree for all half acre lots out there? No. Okay, so that's the point. So now, how do we okay. And that's what part of the, okay, let them be larger on the on the perimeter, but again, for me to go, yeah, okay, we're at least gonna be 50. Let's, so they gotta be at least 50 foot lots. I mean, give us a break, we've got, you have a wall in your neighborhood, sure, you just can't reach out your window. In all fairness, and obviously understanding the community part of it as far as the aesthetic on the outside. Townhouses, I think you can just scratch, and that's the us out here, the journalists that are down. All right, so that part's one. So that's the kind of compromise that you're trying to, but on the other side, and don't ask me to compromise from 250 or 50 to do that. When you want the perimeter part, because it's growth. No, I'm not gonna ask you for 500 because I don't want to see your houses. Don't ask me for 50, so they're right on the road.
I think,
Yeah, I think when you drive by the neighborhood, it's properly screened, you can't tell what walk.
And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. When I can drive by and I can drive on my driving right, because that's how much I can see between each house, and as I go by, I got whatever. Come on.
When it's properly screened, because, yeah, they, when it's properly screened. Now, we know that, but I mean, I think 2060, and it's screened, you got your trees up, I think it's really hard to tell. It's more in, and I can tell you from their side, they're able to, I've seen scenarios where that in 250 takes up 89 acres of developable land. They can use some of that land, they can pay for opportunities in more hedges and things like that.
The word some was in there. The word some,
but they,
200 it's not some,
but they can do that work, but when they get pinched on all fronts, then it's pain. You know, they got to kind of incentivize.
One thing you want to point out about the buffer again, 250-foot buffer is only required under the code when it's adjacent to low density single family residential right now. So if you're on a road, you're not necessarily required to be 250 on the road, depending on what's across the street. So, just so everybody, so the compromise, it's only 70%. So if the compromise is somewhere, okay, we're not going to do 250, but maybe we're going to do something around the entire perimeter, or we're going to do it wherever it is versus just adjacent to low density residential. So I think I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that that's what the code says. Only when adjacent to single family. So in your instance, you were adjacent.
The buffer, I did not get,
Right.
it was not on the road, it was on two sides of my property.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing in your instance that it would apply, but I just want to make sure, again, when we're talking about what the rules require now or what we're talking about.
and that's a great clarification. This property over here, 3%. Of the 70%, 3%. Yeah, and that's what ended up getting approved. 250 was on 3%. So when you're asking about compromise.
That's not that's not-
No. Because it's still in the rules and laws.
Understood, but if you can't change that property.
Changing that property, I care about putting proper rules in, so you can't continue to happen. It's not this rule, but again, when it's on the highway, because I'm talking to the developer that owns it, that turned out to 3%.
I'm down. That's where we're trying to go, we had kind of boundaries, we call it, kind of that sliding scale.
Big comment about 20 to 60% is mixed. I don't have to agree to that's quite a range. But I would say for the lot sizes that are larger, that the percentage of those lots should not be 20%. I think that's too much from my perspective. That market is much smaller than that. If I got 1,000 acres, 2,000 lots, 10% of 200 lots. That's a big piece of my property that are asking for. That's not gonna work for me.
Right.
5% maybe.
So you're telling us again, on the bigger lot, you can start forward?
It's telling me that people to buy and want to. The market strip, it's like the market strip down, who buys a Ford Focus and who buys a Lexus, right? You know,
Well, there's another way to look at it, and this way the planners look at it. If, and I did this one time, if everybody in Florida had 1 acre, every acre in the state of Florida would be gone. Gone. With the population number of acres, I think. Yeah. Say every acre lot, we could have 1 acre lots from here to the full county line. And that's what they're trying to do, is being able to be efficient with land as well.
Everybody,
It is gonna be delicate.
no, it does not, that's all the software.
I just want to say one thing, because we are out here and we all consider our world here and above the forest to the north of us. This is just a personal opinion, but I mean, to be a part of it is how you promote it. And if you do have some marginalized lots, I know there are people, especially some young families, that we have for each other. We promote things like that a lot. And that those people would be interested, maybe you don't have to build a bigger house, but still have those where they can come out and they can have some chickens, they can have some rabbits, and the kids can be in forage and things like that. I mean, that, because you know, as a rural area, they own the world, they want to be a part of the world. You know, every garden, rabbits and chickens and stuff. I mean,
I agree, there is a market for that. Nice.
But if you're talking back to perimeter lots, large lots around the perimeter, you know, what about including the, I mean, a lot of times our buffer tract is separate tracks, right? So if you have a larger lot around the perimeter, and some of that.
Depending on if it's happening or, then I'd say maybe allow, as long as you get the screening and everything, allow some that or survive.
Make those things. Not to be one way to. Get low, get it off. Getting some really low cover.
I guess, that would be worse. I just want to make sure I got it.
You don't have that trouble, but you're the only one that can read your own rate.
Like I removed clustering criteria, field lot size, and that was your point, Steve. I got flexibility in the buffering, the screening, trees, don't like the berms, the fencing. I don't know that we're totally clear on flexibility. We're gonna have to figure that out. Chuck that one off?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. I got commercial, got supported, but we do agree with some voluntary, allowing neighborhood serving uses. I think you talked about maybe doing something on the outside. That's the tricky part of it.
Other people could get to it.
Right.
You can help them with
Well, maybe just ask, one meeting, just draw on the map where it will be.
I think for allowing the perimeter, it would be helpful. There's a couple times we looked at it, we couldn't.
It's not. I don't think we're not looking at it, but, yeah, you have activity center, I think, community plan, maybe.
Yeah, the consultant.
Yeah.
Come up with like near Agmar.
Yeah.
On road.
Just for the locational criteria, I can just put it on.
Yeah, like,
I think we need to do a map somehow and see if there's an issue with that. Say, hey, maybe then you have to kind of do a comp matching for you to allow businesses to go in there or office, if someone, a contractor wants to put an office there. Or something like that, you would start getting, work down there for themselves. But they don't have a land use.
What I was asking, I don't know earlier, as part of this, on that side, I don't know if some people there or whatever. What kind of do anything wrong with somebody else's stuff?
I would like farm.
Not just out here, that everyone, the fact of the matter is how long the people in Fisher go to Bloomingdale because there's a park there, or people in Riverview go, River Hills, go, so again, it's back to just self-contained, the community itself, which, and for James, that if you put it on the outside, then it possibly could serve the community, not the development. Because as it's written right now, because again, there's this 1983, I lived in Bloomingdale, et cetera. My kids never went over to Bloomingdale West. That we didn't go big into basketball courts and it was all, so doing stuff that is to the community is a disservice, in my opinion, to who lives here already.
And I don't have a problem, putting a park, community open space that's passive or active on the perimeter. That's fine.
I mean, what, at Jamie's point, yes, correct. And I think we can agree, we don't want somebody else's, you don't run it somebody.
Well,
Laying on
I would say, to say that, I would tell you, I've seen a lot of guys just go for the community, play basketball and soccer and football games, stuff like that. You see it a lot more, especially in my age range. So you'll see a lot of that transference that's happening.
And again, what percentage of it? You mentioned the bike trails. If we had to get out here and take a survey and we use the bike trails here, I promise you, 95% of them will not be. And I'm 95%. And so that's just 100 cars of traffic that 95 of them don't live out here. You know? Because in the end of all this, and I do believe that we're reasonable, educated people, and we will come to an agreement that, you know, if whether we do like it, we're gonna get to that agreement, and Jared, and not talking about, I'm just making a point, and then we're gonna turn right around, what she was saying before, and we're gonna go right back to the county's problem, and it's gonna be miserable to live out here when we put all those houses, because that part still is not being addressed. I mean, you know, so no matter what you and I, if we agree with half acre lots and you put 5,000 houses out there, and you figure out how to become a billionaire because of that, it's still not gonna cure the problem that's gonna put 10,000 cars out here, you know, so we're really, what's causing the heartburn is more that and where you put your houses and whether or not. We agree on that?
I think y'all should ask the county, put some kind of improvement on CIP list out there.
And if you do not think that that is not, I can't tell you how many days I've written to commissioners and
They don't want to. They don't want to.
yeah, because then they go bad, because that's one of them. So now, and the big, there are two counties, we're not, we're not in debt. If we talk about that, they're behind, we're not in debt. We did that. But the fact of the matter is, we're saying we're behind 20 fire stations, and then they put us on the agenda, as you are saying, now that number jumps to 50 to them, you know, maybe jumps to 50 to them, and they don't want to get them. Yeah, they're just that much further behind.
I think we all agree with construction channel. Just one other thing on the kind of, we're getting to the kind of lot, I don't think it's totally up there, but what I heard you say is kind of percentage, the perimeter lots, I don't want to require that. What you're talking about, you mentioned like 5% or something.
I like that. I think that to address the concerns and also to help us with our perimeter lot requirement today, that larger lots around the perimeter. Yeah.
We put the commercial in there. We got, you know, it's your commercial. And then we get rid of the stacked house on the road as an aesthetic, you know, all that, because, again, we know that once this development comes along, regardless of how we set it up, the stores and all are gonna have to come no matter what. Who you're talking about as being your market, it's not a group of people that's gonna drive 8 miles. They want to put the stove on low, get in their car and get the water they left and come back and their dinner still cooking because it's nothing better part of about 3 minutes. They don't want to drive to 301, you know. So, and so that changes the whole face of it, you know, once that happens. So we know that as well. So we're as Reed kindly said, let's look 10 years. What are we trying to accomplish later? For the community. Where public go. Correct. Yeah, so. All right. I like my wife.
Well, state public.
So we have about 30 minutes left on the small session. We're after that, obviously, for general session, so we won't have to keep talking about it. Yeah, I think Clarence, we've got to quickly kind of pivot, and this is good, which things we agree on.
You feel better for once.
Yeah.
Always know you.
So what do you all, kind of one thing I want to get on, Probably page 5, community benefits, we talked a lot about that. You did mention, it's complicated, and I think to your point, like, there's trade-offs, and buddy, we were trying to make, there's some things that would have to be done. And we did look at the long community plan, try and structure some of that, but I don't feel like we got to your point. I guess, yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to keep this, and your point, the thing was to try to make it more complicated. Is that a little more complicated, so how to simplify?
I mean, I think giving community benefits and assigning dwelling authority to those that are, that's a bad idea. It's really, it's not necessary. In my idea, you could still say there are community benefits that are required. You could still say the maximum density is 2 units per acre, and it could still require community benefits, but I don't know that making this complicated math work makes sense. Because the buddy point, what we talked about in the mama, was you suggesting that the rezoning is coming through the PD, that you should do a community benefits meetings prior to, as part of the zoning process, to allow the community to have input into the benefits that the community wants to see in that particular development, because the geography might be different. We talked about the fact that times change, things might not be on this list, that might be important to the community 5 years from now, and how do you give flexibility to both the developer and the community to provide the community benefit. But when you're assigning units per acre to a specific benefit, it kind of takes that discussion off the table for what does the community want and what's the developer supposed to provide.
So, Kenny, in that regard, do you like what they did in Waimama to at least say by acreage of the development? So you do 1, or you do 2, or you do 3. So you don't do math. It's more on the side of the development as opposed to trying to do math.
Right, yeah.
The reason that is in Waimama is because in Waimama, you can develop a 10-acre tract.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was.
So that's the reason why we did it that way in Waimama. So we could do something like that in Baum, and for the northern areas, if they are separated in that sense, that you can just go ahead and say, hey, you've got to pick 2, pick 3, if you're doing 160 acres, and move on.
So it's just kind of pick list, like, here's a range, that's like 3, if this is 30, 5.
That's what I was scared about this with acres, is just earning back what you already have. List.
Well, I think that's why we all want to have this conversation.
But if you had a list of things, you can see long-term community, that say, hey, help out here, I mean, you have to work.
Perception is that
You take it away.
taking away something that you already like it. Pick list.
What about the actual content wise? This is very similar to one. Actually, Mom took this and probably scaled it down a little bit. But it's just,
I think that there needs to be more feedback.
yeah. I mean, and they're all, like, what is
Some of
but it is,
Some of this is what we're talking about as part of compromising, permanent lots, the large permanent lots, we're talking about that as like a requirement in certain instances, so I think.
yeah, I think what we were trying to do is come up with a requirement, but you had to be more like, Steve was saying 5%, I can only do 5% for perimeter. If you do 10, 15%, but yeah, it's your point, I think it's all, God, today, you can only do, you just said it's already there, two dwelling units is already there, but I think the commission probably knows.
Well, I mean, that's,
That's a weak argument.
You have to meet the luxury, you get there, right? It's something that's forcing, what we need to do to get there today is not what the community wants. And it results in a negative result for what the community wants, so I don't think that we should be.
I mean, this list, but is there a priority? What is the community?
Right.
We have top 3, 5, 7, and 1.
Right. And Buddy's point is he doesn't want everybody to say, like, okay, if they're affordable housing is one of the things, like, if that, the community doesn't see that as a benefit, then why, that's, it just seems like.
Take it on.
We never asked for.
Right, so.
No, that transfer, the affordable housing,
Right, and, you know, if we're gonna have anything about road setback agreements or anything like that, you gotta have, you know, there's gotta be a requirement for the county to put these things on plans.
Right, and that's, and we had all those conversations with Cameron Clark in the county attorney's office, you know, again, part of this is having the community say, we want larger perimeter lots. Steve saying, well, 5% is already on there, I can do some additional perimeter lots, and that might be one of the community benefits. Another thing is the other way around. Steve may be able to go to the county attorney's office and go, if you can get this segment of the roadway on the CIP, I might be able to work with you to actually do that now and not wait a couple of years and get the payback. That's the mobility satisfaction agreement. You know, so there's always the community is speaking, the developer is speaking, and the county is trying to listen. Right, to be able to be responsive to say, these are the things that we're hearing from both sides and listing it out here and then allowing that conversation to occur during that rezoning phase. So folks can raise their hand and go, our community plan says that there's supposed to be trails right there. So we work with the developer to see if the developer will put trails in right there and that be the community benefit.
The PICO agreed to allow trails in there.
Not yet. That's right, yeah. I don't know if staff has talked to people yet, but I know the consultant here, they were proposing that, if they go about the ticket. And I don't know if that
Yeah, we reached out to Tico, and Tico is interested, but no, Tico is not ready to allow that to occur.
liability of
Yeah, yeah.
It's on, yeah, it's on.
So, I thought that, you know, recently, that it would be going over, I mean, because
They don't need it.
you know, I mean, correct.
So in fairness to both sides, we get, I'm sorry.
One of the counties make a deal and take that land and give them their interest. And they don't worry about it.
Well, it's a bit outside of my station in life.
You don't have the checkbook?
Not similar, right? And it's pretty awesome the way it runs here. For the guys in your community can bike up the trails. You know, without having to get out the roads. I hate some bicycles on the road. I'm sorry, I'm scared that and, so I'm calling morning out here. And I almost accidentally hit them on a phone morning. You see them, next thing you know, they're on the crazy. But that, the way that runs through there, I mean, that seems like something to help define the community and it would be attractive to people coming over down here without easy access. If you can.
I've got something to say about question. Instead of saying no question, let's have a minimum between houses of so many feet. Right now, it's about 15 foot of the budget, or less. Let's have a minimum, something. Instead of measuring question, how's it going to go, let's put it together. Regardless of what.
I'm getting excited about that. If you can. Yeah, great.
I gotta say, Jay, I think it was great that you said that we're here together, we're putting all this together, and the county is listening to us. You know, that was a word I heard, the county is listening to us. And I find that to be interesting, because the only argument, the biggest, almost 90% of the argument to the county is an infrastructure problem. And we don't see that being addressed at all. So exactly what are you listening to?
This is the way to go. I said it's just easier if you're an elected official to vilify and put it on the development community and say, you know, the development community paid the fees that were charged, right? And if there has been political will, whether we agree with the decision or not, I mean, the school board, for example, who's used school board and school impact fees, school board only just asked for impact fee increase. They never came to the development community and said, hey, we're in a crisis, we need to raise fees. And they, in fact, they specifically came to the development community before they were going out for the sales tax referendum and said, please support the sales tax referendum. And no, don't look at the increasing impact fees now, because we just think that was politically bad, so we're gonna come back with an impact fee increase next year. And those communities supported it, but they didn't tell us. And same thing with the residential district fees in terms of, we pay what the county charged. And it was the county's responsibility to.
They take money.
Right, they, or not.
Yeah, that's.
Those are raising taxes is hard, right? I mean, but we want to do that as well. We don't want to raise regular taxes, and where do you get money? And you're gonna get it.
Well, and unfortunately, being a business owner, as Buddy is, et cetera, and you run a church, we're on the other side of it, because there isn't any, and I'll give you endless podcasts of billionaires, and every one of them will tell you, it's far easier to lower your capital 5% than it is to increase your income 5%. You know, so again, that's all county issues that has nothing to do with this, you know, right here. You put in a row of light bulbs, and then you gotta pay a change order to move them, because the county put them all in the wrong place by 4 feet, you know, and that's all acceptable. And I don't know about your legal world, but in my world, I don't have anybody, and I'm gonna go and put all these medical records out and say, and then come in and go, oh yeah, by the way, I put it in the wrong place, and it's gonna cost you 30 grand for me to move them where they belong, because I didn't put it in the right place. And that happens in the county repeatedly, all day, every day. You know, so that whole argument of rate, does anybody realize that we are a country because we got tired of being taxed? That's why you don't want to, you know, so that will never be an answer. That will never be an answer. I just keep collecting more.
It's not really about that, if you want to transition to touch on it, this is a big deal. And you mentioned it, because in all these green areas, what, you know, we don't talk about what we do about that under. We talk about fees, we're getting these criteria that still keep properties unless you aggregate. So I want to get some discussion going on that, because right now it's, you're 160 acres or over, you could aggregate, you can do, or you can do 1 unit for 5 acres. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. You have anything else
That's, again, we're trying to segregate, identify, how do we really move the needle forward, because that's really the next conversation.
Right. I mean, another thing that we've heard, right, is that the property value concern, so right now, you have to have. There's always.
Except for the grandfather,
Yeah.
there's a lot of it.
Which is a deal. But, yeah, what are your thoughts? You look at this map and we're in, we've got, Andy sitting on our table, we've got.
Pick a number. Pick a number, like 20, 24.
Let's say, what do you do about 20, 30 acre lots? And right now, you can't really do it, right? One year, 5 acre, 40 back.
And what's the compromise thing to ask for, or the, you know, the readjustment being asked for them, and what are we,
Right now,
what are we being asked in the debate on that?
Yeah.
Or discussion,
I guess it would be, building long term, just allow that, if you're allowing smaller acreage sites to go, they want to have it for 1 acre, if they want it, that's what will happen. Nothing happens, then we'll find a way to aggregate, to do 40 things. That's what I would. And if you create that market, I say 1 acre on the small sites, and it's not going to be fast, and then that will start to find out the minimum. The more popular, really want higher. Now, those 2 sites that are 150, and those are they're going to go under whatever RP2 modified standards are going to happen. But people are going to figure out how to get things done on those, but that's the way it kind of said, hey, yeah, we don't mind money in tracks or I think tracks, but that's how that set the time for the community. Well, I think it gives them an option other than aggregate. They're only option for aggregate. That's what I said. So, personally.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, you have half acre, 1 acre ones. Now you're looking at this way, you couldn't do that, right?
It's 1 for 5 now, so I mean, so they're obviously, they're half acres now, and now they can 10. Right. Which unfortunately, and I have no trouble understanding, I know it's 20, I know it's, I don't have no trouble with understanding that, but it gets back, everything rolls back to number one, and number one is we're gonna add more people, and we're gonna add more cars, and we're not interested in situation. It's just rolling back to that, saying which is what has caused the argument in the first place.
At some point in my perfect world, there's gonna be one project that all of us will go down the county together on and say, we want to see this project done, we want to see this project on the list. You're not gonna be able to solve 10 of them, but you can get one. Road, you're gonna say, and you can get everyone here to say, we want this road improvement, put it on the list. So as the developments get approved, don't get approved, whatever happens, they can develop. And in my world, I'd love to see that happen, but it's gonna take everybody going together and saying, this is approved, right, see in this area. And yeah, you know what, there's approved in all over the county, but we're not Harrison County, we want to improve it in our area. And they're not thinking that way. They're thinking, oh, who cares about improving the mom, we got problems with Bend, we got problems, City of Tampa, we want bus lines that will never make it out here, ever. And we want trains that will never make it out here, we want ferries, but they haven't heard, I don't think, from y'all, this is the improvement we want to see. And then after you get one done, then you go to 2, and then you go 3, but you got to start with 1.
And I'll disagree with that a little bit, not a little bit, I'm gonna add it, I'm not disagreeing, is because, and especially Phil, who's good to be here right now, he stood up the very first day and said that the infrastructure has to happen in conjunction, he was talking about 672, it was a specific road he was talking on. Yeah, I understand, but so I just want you to know that was brought up right at the beginning, and it's in here, that infrastructure and development will coincide. That they're not gonna be on the plan in 5, we're gonna start looking at it in 10, and in 15, we're gonna put first shovel. That, I just want you to know that, and it wasn't all about 670, 672.
Well, and I'd say to that the only point rather than do that is you have to be technical.
Sorry,
When they're doing their development, they can do that road, if they know they're gonna get reimbursed for the part that they're not causing. And so that's the way roads used to be built for decades.
Yeah, but we asked them to go back and they're like, no, you can't do it anymore because the state, because now you said that the county commissioners can dump it on the developers, well, the county commissioners also dump it on the state.
That's true if they go away from the mobility fee, they don't have to have the part of the ordinance that doesn't allow us to, that says that in order for us to get credit, that would be on CIP. That has nothing to do with the state. They can't charge, they can't do the old currency way, where it was just that they forced us to do something that wasn't, that we caused, that's different, right? The two separate issues, one is forcing us to do something to get our development approval. The other is incentivizing them to do it by giving us mobility credit back. The second part, they can absolutely fix themselves.
And I don't disagree with you, but I've sat with Adam and Joe more times and just like, dude, hello again, and Adam tells me a stupid joke because I was going to start the whole conversation, because in the end, it still goes back to what is going on, and what is going on is that the counties,
You know, and so, we get right back to not nothing getting done.
I would add that from transportation, I mean, we are having a series of work sessions, DOT's having a series of work sessions coming up, over the next, months, right? And it is being discussed, right? I'm not necessarily saying it's discussed for like 672 in the rural area, but overall transportation is being discussed. So that is another, effort that you fall into.
Unfortunately, the work sessions are not patient. There's no opportunity for any of us to have any input on them. They're all being done.
I mean, you got a real shot, counting on most of our highway. Already. You got a
Set it a package pattern. That goes back to the Lexington infrastructure, having more people, not to get that infrastructure right.
Yeah, it's different than this land use, but it is something that can be a focus to say, put 672 on this. Hey, Hillsborough County, they spent $47.5 million for, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 feet road frontage. Go ahead and donate the right of way for 672. That's much as part of the road right away. Asphalt, yeah, it's expensive, but it's not expensive to dirt. And that's probably it. But you know what? If you don't try, some people would, would say, hey, you know what? That makes, so we want, otherwise, mobility fees, and they're going out forward.
So, yeah, we were just the next community to start being educated on how what's happening around us, because they call out for us. Keystone already, Keystone's great, for that reason. But because we're just where they were, 50 years ago, in our 3 years, trying to, and the fact of the matter is you have a great opportunity as a developer because there is enough people moving here and the land is out, and in your rights to the landowners, that they're gonna have their opportunity, that, they don't care to live there anymore, or it's time for them to go to a condo on the beach and get rid of the 500 acres that they've had, their great grandfather bought, and et cetera. I don't know, again, so we do, so
We have 5 minutes left, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so you guys, on the agenda, what we got right now is, we've got a number of things coming up. We've got the planning commission briefing, June 15th, so what we're gonna do there is engage everything here, and really take all this and update it, what the heck we've been doing for the last few months. And I feel like we've got some agreement here, I don't think we're there yet. We got a series of DOCC meetings, open house on June 24th.
Where is that on there?
It's number 3 or number 5 on the bottom. So that's kind of the schedule and what we're working towards right now. I guess I want to just bring up, is this useful for you all? I mean, what I don't want to do is go back into the black box and hear what we just heard today, come up with something. What's the best way? What's that?
This is invaluable.
Yeah.
That group, and have a body, pain.
I heard it. There's a lot going on. Really, yeah, but I think this is great. And we're probably not gonna have it totally.
My question is, buddy, sorry, we got some things that are agreed upon. I guess my question would be, and y'all are kind of interpreting things, I'm trying to figure out what everybody wants. It seems like the changes have to be things that are agreed upon, and then if you want to tackle the next one, tackle the next one. Because otherwise, I mean, basically what we're going to get to is in zoning, perhaps, same thing, right? You're gonna have the same negotiation, but in the comp plan, we're never gonna, we're never gonna agree on everything without having a specific site talking about. So I think, that's what I'm pushing you, is you're gonna try to kind of create stuff, or you're just gonna modify the plan to what's things are being agreed upon, and if we can agree on something, it's like, it's a fun, and we'll figure it out, is that your mindset now, or is it to try to still create some of the stuff that's very hard to agree upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think we gotta come up with something, right? We gotta come up with a modified, updated RP2, so there might be some things that I don't have a total answer on when you're asking.
Well, I'm asking, are you going to take it off this roof, or are you going to try to play with down commissions? Well, are you gonna, I mean, are you gonna report back what was agreed upon, and these are the changes we can make today? Or are you gonna try to do more changes than that, where when we go to the county commission at some point in time, we're still gonna be on opposite fronts?
Okay,
Just one of the concerns, and a bunch of the stuff, we're gonna talk about the aggregation and all that room area that's gonna be available.
Yeah,
Is, I mean, if we approve this, or whether it's a RP2 or whatever, is there gonna be a way that we can put a tiny mechanism that, not that we get this approved, and all of a sudden, development just swoops in here, buys it. I mean, they're probably talking about landowners right now, about when this gets done, so they can go ahead and get started, but not that we got, 5 or 6 different areas that are getting developed all at one time. Is there something you do, tiny, you only allow to do 200 acres here, 200, 5 years, 200 acres here. So we're just not swamped with a bunch of,
I mean, to me, the way to accomplish that would be to leave, not get into the smaller, leave it once, you have to be one, in this area, you have to be 160 above, the grant rules to 160 above, leave the rest on the 5 now. Maybe come back and revisit that as part of the community plan or update or something to review. Leave that, punt that one, but I think that's the harder one, and I think that's the easier one to have people coming in and start activating. Having it all at once, because that really only leaves you the 2 parcels that are 160 or more, and the aggregate rules that are in place now for this area. They're not subject to the aggregate plan area rules right now. You're separate. To me, that would be the best way to accomplish that timing mechanism, is really only have the 2 properties, right? Right now.
I mean, that basically before, because you have these 2 big that are already in the process.
Right,
You got those 2, and then you got 2 other areas that could.
yeah, there's well, there's 4 that are already, these rules that we're talking about today are not, none of them agree to connect parts of the 2 that are already. Right. As far as, it's coming a little bit, right? Yes, exactly. And so, to me, that would probably be the easiest way to limit that. Again, maybe with some soft language that we're gonna revisit, smaller at some point in time, at some update or whatever. And then my concern is, I don't think we're anywhere near ready to even consider a public hearing from the line on an update. I mean, it's the end of May right now. I mean, let's say you got back in 2 weeks with language, we all met again. I mean, unless it was the perfect language, maybe it'd be overly optimistic. It just seems unrealistic that we're gonna get to a place where we're gonna be having ordinance drafted and language ready for on this hearing schedule. Because I think we have made good progress, but what I hate to see is that, well, we made good progress, let's throw something together so we meet these deadlines, and then they're not happy, we're not happy, it's so much work.
yeah, and I think right now, so I'm gonna update what we're reading down, here's the things we agree on, here's the things we're not there yet. I don't have anything now, something under that 160 right now. Jay, Michelle, Jeff, and Eric, got anything else, but, what do you think are all thoughts of, is it something, another one like this? Because I agree, last time, push something together, put it in front of the board, and it's like, I'm passionate with stuff.
If you take this one, the RPC, you take that, combine and not combine, and have this listed in it, because we didn't address each one of these, but we addressed a lot of it, and put them side by side and say, okay, this is what we talked about, this is where we are, and then let us go through these, if you're gonna have another meeting, and say, okay, now, how do we address this point? How do we address this point? And what we can say, okay, we gotta do this, this, and this. And maybe if this is spelled out, I mean, y'all do a great job handling all this stuff and everything, but this article too is what we need to address. And so, okay, what are we gonna do up there? A, it says construct on site non-residential. We want that, we don't want it, how we want to change it. And address each one of these, let's make the final decision. Because we talk a lot, we do a good job talking, but if this is what we can change.
Maybe just brief one.
Yeah, and I agree with her, but I want to add this, where we were prior to the last meeting and where we are after this second one, nobody's going to tell me that this isn't helping.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And I understand the time constraint problems, but we're way further than we've ever been.
I don't, yeah, I don't want to go beyond December 31st.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants that.
They're playing, there's still time.
The adoption, currently our schedule is to transmit in August and adopt in October. So obviously it can get pushed a little bit, but nobody wants to see it get pushed. If, you want to see if we can actually manage to get this done. We have our open house scheduled. We are in production for the open houses right now. So, this will come in for a landing eventually. But I do think that what we need to be able to say is to look at it and have the thoughtfulness to be able to say, here is what we agreed upon in writing, proposed policy-wise, actually, so y'all know, not just the idea that like, yeah, we want big lots, but actually see it, what is policy number, and move forward on that. And then if there are some places where we aren't in agreement, that is something that you will be able to go in front of the board of county commissioners and have part of that conversation. And that is part of this. We take it so far and we take it in, we give it to you, but if there is something that both sides of the table can't agree upon, then it's out of staff and consultant's hands, and we take that conversation to the board.
Well, individual people or property owners might have a right with what we're all talking about in here too, and they'll obviously have the right to say so at the board. I guess my concern, Dave, and I really appreciate it, but you're talking about having an open house on Thursday, June 24th. We don't even have language that even any of us have reviewed, so I don't know what you're gonna workshop in 30 days, other than just generally what we talked about, but in terms of, to me, if you're gonna have an open house on a plan amendment, we need to know what that plan amendment is, or if we say that we have an open house, and whether the working group or whatever it is, but that's my concern.
Sure, and I think that would be what Jared's next meeting would be, actually provide some language so that people can say, okay, this is the percentage, this is the lot size. The community benefit list hasn't changed. That's what went to the board back in February. That's something that the community has already seen since November of last year.
Right, but this group is talking about changing that, and they're trying to work towards potentially changing that and working through that. So I just feel like these have been productive. I think we need at least one more before that happens, where we all look at it and talk about it, because we're talking after, right? And so it hasn't been written down. We need at least one more meeting, probably two, where we get something presented to us. We all talk about it, because we get what did we got to Jared, and then come back together again before something is corrected.
Yeah, really, send it to you prior to us sitting down would be ideal.
Yeah, and maybe off an ABC.
I'd like to see
ABC.
possible, you have drawings that show the different open space and stuff like that. That's good, it kind of gives a visual. I'd like to recommend our council. If they not grow these properly, let's sit with that. We know it's approved. Can you show us the drawings on what we're asking, the difference, and so we know it's approved, so we visualize there.
They just tell me,
They do so, and let's
prepared to grasp what we're talking
yeah,
about.
5% half acres, and then a 10% half acre lots, and then let's see what it
Well,
was.
I will tell you that I actually thought that was a good idea. Jay thought that was a good idea too. And you started down that road to do that on a real piece of property, And somewhere along the line, they decided they picked a piece of property in Madison County.
We received instruction, not to show real property that was broken, to look elsewhere.
How do you have recognition to show, I mean, you have proof? That's fair repercussion.
I guess I'm confused. It's consent, it's
On their own. I mean, you already have this schematic and everything else, and I do it on my application.
Well, yes, that's what
Where, the schematic that Jared already showed will be updated going forward. Because again, in the open house, in the public hearing, it's very important to be able to show something visual as that representation, because let's be honest here, Michelle can read the code, knows everything about the code, and 2/3 of the rest of us in this room are gonna scratch our head. But if we get to visually see it on a piece of paper, what it means to those buffers, the law, a box down here that says, if not this, it could be this, because those are the different options in the code. That lets you kind of work it in.
Between
Now, the point,
Lay it out the way we're not.
right, that is what Jared said.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I don't do is say, well, we kind of as a group agree upon, test it again, because there's certain things we're gonna see like, ooh, I don't like this exactly.
So you take the picture and you draw the outline and you do all that on there and you write on there Polk County.
Nothing gives a rip that the address on it is right or not. We're looking at a pictorial representation. It would mean nothing to me that that picture right there said over our.
Look at that, 672, goes north south.
I would say, Jay, on that, this plan, and what comes out of it, should not have to be pictorially shown in the end to understand what the rules are. That's how we got here to begin with.
Oh, yeah,
It's so complicated that you didn't know what it meant, and so that ambiguity led to, well, gee, I don't know what it meant. Like, maybe it means this, it leads to different interpretations. So I think where we're trying to go is where it's much more easily understood, so somebody can look at it and say, okay, this is what the rules are.
Sure, I like that, I'm just saying that in the end, somebody said, well, what is this actually gonna look like on paper? I always say that.
No, I appreciate that, but I don't want to have to use it to interpret.
Oh, yeah, it's not an adopted portion of it, by no means. What Jerry is doing as a schematic will not be an adopted portion.
So, yeah, there's three lines, we're gonna need another meeting too. Jay, you want to hit on that, talk about that? That's.
Yeah, I mean, we could throw around the date of June 8th, you know, the possibility of that. We don't have this space right now because when they go into summer, there's a lot of things that are happening in here, so we're still working to see if there can actually be another venue that's available for us. The COVID restriction was an issue, which maybe it will lessen itself. You know, we talked to South Shore Library said they can only have 12 people in the room because of their social distancing requirement, you know? We're a tight group, you can see our social distancing right now, but still, I think we can find a place, you know, I'd at least like to ask, if, I can use the covered pavilions and everything else, if it's a shorter meeting where we come together, stand up, that's at least better than I think having it virtual.
My mama convention center, we talked about.
Yeah, I can again call down there. I know that I've been talking to Joy Robinson, who's, one of my parks folks here to see what I can get. That's been my issue is that everything has programming because they go into the summer. So we're working through.
You're all mixed use, I have heard people take vacations, Bill.
Yeah, so, that's another meeting.
Yeah, I know, it's just a question I'm here too, so. Yeah, I want to keep this group together and keep the momentum going, so.
Is there enough in the budget to take everyone on vacation?
You're asking me to be there, I can say right now, the week of June 7th and the 22nd to the 28th, no.
Okay. Bill, Brian, which I call June, yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah. So we'll just follow Bill wherever he's going.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, Jay, we can talk some more and do something on that and get that out there.
I don't know about others, but I know I need to get part of the comments.
Yeah, I'm there.
Appreciate
I'm getting hungry.
it. We need to argue the one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate that. So, you guys have a good rest of the day.
For Saturday.
Again, this is a little bit of a review with Jared Schneider, Kimberly Horn, working with the Planning Commission and the county on this project. And let's see if I can flip the slide. Maybe it's a space. Oh, it's just so little finicky. So what we're going to do today, we're going to spend a little bit of time to talk about some of the small group, the focus group sessions that we've been having. So we had one this morning. We've had now, buddy, 2 different sessions prior, one in early May. So we're just going to give a little bit of, I'm just looking at you because you're right here in front of me. But you're on the spot here. So we've had a total of 3. And really what we've been trying to talk about are some of the finer details of kind of the code update that we're going through. We also, today, I'll spend a little bit of time going through, creating what we call beta tests. And what the beta tests do, they really look at what's on the books today in this RP2 area, and then what we're proposing, and then trying to understand what the differences are. So I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Other thing today, we want to just be open and transparent and kind of talk about our schedule. So, we do have a small group, so why don't we just go, I know everybody already did this a little bit, but let's go through some quick introductions. And you're shaking your head. Did you want to go through? You are here, yes. So I'm, again, Jared Schneider at Kimberly Horn.
And I'm Nicole Glasso, also with Kimberly.
Okay.
Danny Dixon, 4th generation Hillsborough PM. Selma Saffron, Emerson Farms, and also pastor of Southwest Church in Wyoming.
Henry Franklin, small business owner, downtown. Buddy Harbaugh.
All right. Oh, I missed you guys.
Back here.
Yeah.
Priya, I'm with the Planning Commission, I'm here for the support.
I'm Michelle Heinrich with Development Services with Hillsborough County.
Jay, you're always last back there. All right. Thanks for humoring me on that. So that's just good for everyone else to hear. So again, back up, a little bit of the purpose of what we're doing is we're looking at the changes to the RP2 area, and I'll show you a map of what that looks like. We had some robust discussions, and we're trying to create what's a workable solution for policies in this area. And there's a lot of trade-offs that we're going through today, talking about maintaining that rural character, what development looks like, how do we change the smaller lots that have been going in there in some of the developments, how do we address that and the impacts of future development. So this is the RP2 area. Today, we've kind of been zeroing in on this pinkish area, the Baum Village plan. And RP2 is also that yellow area as well. So the yellow and pink areas are what we talk about for RP2. And then we've got the kind of the purplish, some people say pink dotted line, and that's the Baum community plan area. So just to give a little context of what we're looking at today. We love our planning terms, but one of the things that I guess just this slide, what we're trying to show is what we're actually addressing, talking about. There's a comprehensive plan amendment, and so there's the comprehensive plan really just it's the higher level policies that guide development, and so we're looking at the RP2 area, the comprehensive plan amendment, and then there's also, it's kind of like layers of an onion. You get deeper and deeper, and so the land development code is really where it gets detailed, and that's what we're looking at as well. And the land development code are just some of the more detailed regulations. So real quick, we're going to recap what we heard. There's the dates, April 24th and May 3rd, and then also what we talked about today. I'll catch you up on that. So we got in and really talked about the density development pattern. We're getting into what kind of lot sizes look like, and today we were talking about that. There's obviously the concern of the 40-foot lots, how close things are packed together. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the right mix? What are half-acre lots? And if we're going to allow smaller lots, are those internal to the site? We got into open space. We've been looking at requiring an open space percentage. That hasn't been, we haven't had as much support on that. So we're talking about lowering that percentage down. We're talking about the buffering around homes. So what we agree on is maintaining that rural character, the agricultural spaces. And I thought we had more of this today. There's some things we can agree on, some things that we're still working on. But the commercial focus, that was looking at specific areas or creating a map in Baum specifically where commercial could occur. Last time we talked about, I think it's pre-time, the dark sky community. And then I hit on it. You'll see a lot of this is repetitive, the varying lot sizes, and what that gets to is not having cookie cutter homes. The infrastructure is the biggest one we keep hitting on, so, and that's something we don't have solved yet, but we're going to continue to talk about that, is having better infrastructure in the area. Recap of May 22nd, we talked again today about the focus on the lot sizes, like I mentioned, the open space and some of those acreage thresholds. So I think, again, there's a lot of agreement, and there's a lot of, if you want to have more information, we can talk about that after the presentation, but we posted over here some of the main points that, thanks for modeling that, Nicole. But today there's what we call a clustering requirement, and so we talked about reducing that or removing that, and then, yeah, we can go into some more detail. I still feel like what needs to be determined, that we got a lot today on kind of the lot mixes, so I think we got enough today to kind of come back to you all and talk more about that in detail. And that's what we're trying to clarify, and so I don't think you can do that at all. You couldn't have 3 parcels, like a 50 parcel, right? 50, 100.
Correct.
Yeah, you
correct.
couldn't do that today. But even so, we're still trying, that's where we're trying to keep going. Clear, what does that mean? You have to continue to have a road connection. And also, we're trying to get away from this having 2 parcels, one on 672 on the north, one on the south. That's meaning that. No, it's one south. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So we're just trying to put more specific language.
I think, you have a house on it. Can you build another house with your mother-in-law?
Good, chicken shouldn't have to walk across the street to get together, I can get a farm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah. So in this handout, you all should have in front of you, and all right, I lost it. Everybody has this handout, it's like a 5-pager on the front page is kind of the 2 site plans, for the 1 site plan. All right. So that's what we're going to get into right now. On page 1, what we did, we took the existing language that's out there, the existing regulations, and we basically said a 255-acre site, and we actually grouped 3 parcels together and came up with the 255 acres, and basically showed this is what you could do today. So up to your 2 dwelling units per acre, you could get up to 511 units.
There's something wrong here.
What you got?
Something wrong with the survey. that never happened.
We're trying to show the best case scenario for you, Jamie. Yeah, so if they were to follow that, 70%, that's what it was. That was single dwelling, but. Yeah, on the backside, we got emergency access. So then we walked through and we said, okay, yeah, the perimeter area, that includes 25% of the site. And we looked at the common areas and the retention of 15%, that's a typical, we talked about that, that's a typical percentage you'll see, 15% of the site will be used. And then the lots make up 32% of the entire property. And, you know, interestingly enough, I was talking to Michelle about this. This is where we didn't even hit the clustering, 3.5 dwelling units. We were close, but this site plan doesn't even, we would have had to squeeze it in even more than what you're seeing here. Like when we look at, so I think the percentage includes what's in developable is all the retention, the roads, and then the lot width, right?
The stormwater cannot be included unless it's accessible to everybody.
Okay.
You know, like a central feature, improved, even perhaps with some watering pads. Normally, the stormwater ponds are behind a home, or perhaps the homes are all rear, you know, abutting it to where there's no public access. In those cases, that doesn't count towards open space.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, and then, so yeah, we didn't quite make it, so it would have even been clustered further than what we're showing. And then on page 2, you'll notice we were just trying to provide a couple of illustrations. So you'll see we have letters A, B, C, D on page 1, and those all relate to kind of the pictures. So Jamie, we got the 250-foot buffer there in A. You'll see it's just an illustration of what that looks like. Letter B, we were trying to show, B, C, and D, we're just trying to show different lot types and sizes. And then E on the upper right on that page 2, we were trying to show what a commercial use uses. And we had a lot of good discussion on that, of having commercial on the perimeter. And I think that's what y'all were talking about, having something on the outside. So then we moved to page 3, and what we did is we took the code that we proposed, regulations of where we were at earlier in the year. Let's take that same site, see what happens. And, you know, we laid it out there, and I don't think this fit what everybody was really looking for either. So that's where we knew we need some refinement here. But we did start, this is where we started to introduce the larger lots on the periphery. The existing code doesn't have any of that. So you'll notice on page 3, and then page 4 has illustrations as well. But that's like where we started. You know, the green and yellow kind of show the larger lots. So that's, again, the same number of units, 511 units on a 255-acre site. And then we did the perimeter buffer area, and that actually ranged, there's 100 to 150 feet buffers, 150-foot buffers. But where we did the buffers, you had to have additional screening, like the trees were in there, and we've got an illustration of that on page 4. We used the same retention, and then the open space of 40%. So something we've been talking a lot about is it's tough. And, you know, it was tough to put all the 40% and put the units in there. So we really looked at that, and we talked about really dropping that open space percentage down, and then allowing for larger perimeter lots on the perimeter. Yeah.
If you're looking at more than 250-foot buffer, what price house?
What price homes?
Yeah, I wanted to say this thing else. What would that be, like, $200,000 house, or would it be less than that, or? I mean, I know that one with 100-foot buffer, acre lot.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I couldn't give you a number right now. I wish I could. I'd have to ask some other folks, but what I can tell you is I talked to some of the land development folks, and a lot of times they have the larger lots in the interior by the lake feature, because those are premium lots and more expensive lots. So that this way of thinking of putting on the perimeter is a little bit different. And I think when we first introduced it, a lot of the folks we were talking to right in this room were or, hey, that would never happen, but I think we've gotten to the point where it could happen, there could be different value properties.
But you can see on this one, I mean, the size of the lots. Very, different sizes.
You know, you look on page 3.
I'm sorry, existing product.
Oh, okay.
There's so many different sizes. More than 2 sizes lots. And they look bigger on the current.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're trying to get at it is if you do the perimeter lots as the high valued and having a range of values, yeah. And that's tough. That's not something we can get into in a code of like, here's what the value is going to be. But I think that's where we're trying to allow the different mix, and then you allow people to have different opportunities.
Well, I think when we're talking to Steve, Bill, Eisenhower, I mean, I think it, maybe, I mean, I don't. Because he gave a price range that they were trying to get.
Mm-hmm.
For the young families, you know, that type of thing.
Yep.
Maybe we put beans on it, I mean, maybe we go for a little bit, either bigger lots, didn't have to have quite as pricey a house, or bigger lots, and more pricey a house, so, you know. Just going by what statistics or something that they.
From the market analysis that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. It's a slippery slope when you're regulating property. So but yeah, again, I think that's why we wanted to get the range of lot sizes in there.
Remember what I said to the developer, who I would develop.
Well, it is.
They know that. So every. So don't let them form it.
I feel like we were getting into this a little bit earlier and kind of, we were talking about the test that site or whatnot. I think our idea is to get a little further along with these updates, like I was mentioning, and then test it again, or this was useful to us. And I think talking to Michelle, the county and planning commission staff too, we definitely saw things that, hey, yeah, we need to make some changes. Like for example, the clustering, you know, maybe that just gets removed.
Do I have a good idea about how to do better?
I don't think it's Steve quite there. I don't think he wants to regulate. Yeah.
But that was determined cluster. Because right now, it's maybe 12 foot.
I think my concern with that, Jamie, is that you preclude yourself from having the large lots on the outside. Because I think what Steve's trying to say is I'm going to put it inside and I want to pack them in the inside if I'm going to get to my unit count. And then that allows me to have more space to do the larger half acre or 1 acre lots.
And the developer could be smarter than that, maybe make more money. He could say, okay, you want 25, 30,000 apart. Now the house is at 40 by 40, they're gonna be 20 by 80. And you got the same size house, they're gonna take my money.
Yeah, good point. Jay and Michelle know this well. In zoning code, a lot of time you have those setbacks on house. But right now we don't have specific setback on a house. So yeah, Steve said, you go to an urban area, they might have a 0 setback or a 5 or 10 foot. And then I think, Jamie, you're probably saying, I want 25, 50 feet or something. Football field between homes.
We're always gonna ask for more.
So y'all have seen this. Any kind of questions, or I guess let's talk a little bit about, this is a little bit where we get into kind of the open format, and I know you're looking at this for the first time, so if you've got questions for us as well, I'd like to just kind of open up and hear about, we talked about a little bit of this already, but what do you kind of like, or maybe, or what do you like about the options, the concepts, what do you dislike? Yeah, I think we talked a lot about that already. I think, Jamie, you mentioned you like those 250 foot buffers. I knew you would on that page 1. David, we talked about that in the past too, so. You stretching or hands up?
No, looking at page one. And also. And I see the, education, the amenities area. This reminds me of Southport down here with the same issues and same problems. I don't see any places for people to park on the streets. I like on page 4, the interior lots with alleyway access. That removes all the cars onto the main streets around the subdivision, which is a very passive free access for emergency fire vehicles. We're at the amenities area, on page 4B, where you're showing the neighbor that you've got no parking lot for them, so therefore they park on the street, the same way we do in Southport. They have real nice cars, but they have to park on the street, and then you're trying to get in or get out, or emergency vehicles get access. They're weaving their way through this place where there should be ample parking for these people to enjoy these areas. You know, because even, you know, on page 3, section C, these two mom and dad don't work. My dad worked, mom, dad comes in, mom worked, dad comes. Now you got mom, dad, junior sister, and every home has at least 4 cars. And they only have a place to park one on the lawn at their house. The rest of them are in the street. And I wish that they would provide the 3-car garage, which is a super thing, the alleyway where they remove them off. Isn't that what's going on all Riverview Road, just north of, first subdivision on the block? You see all these homes, but you don't see any cars in the front. And the road is totally open to drive around. They are, if I'm not mistaken, they are parking in the rear between the homes. A little bit more accessible.
Good point.
It's just like I said, and I won't. When you be done, go this way, not that way. You go right, you take the first road to the right, and soon as you go by the ball post office, pull in the ambulance. If they could build subdivisions like Amberson, this is what we want. We want to showcase town. We don't want clustering the house. We don't want people walking home. We want it to be a nice, beautiful community, not like what we practiced in the past, but that, because that's a mess.
Yeah,
One meeting all day. It's a community, still a business, just being house, just how stacked on top of each other, cars lined up and down the streets. We may not supposed to park on the street, they do, we're on the park, and we don't have anywhere else to park, we just step one and build the door, so we moved out here. Because now I'm going to take a lot, and it's a nice long driveway, and I'm very happy, it's like that last gallons at my house, where I have part of my yard. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's quiet, and we moved out here because we wanted peace and quiet after a long day of work. And where I welcome, it's one of the best places to live. I would love to see more of that out here, that people can enjoy the type of glory that we get to have in modern business. So it's packed, community, so there was a way to accomplish that. I would be all for it. I would love to look at it, so I can enjoy the life.
The developer, so they can't make any rental.
I know.
Yeah, that's where we start getting into infrastructure, like you can't just do you know, that's where we're probably gonna run a little bit of the whole area under 160 acres, you just do 1 acre lots because you can't build the roads, the schools that we talked about. But I like where we're going with some kind of compromise of having the mixture again, the half acre, 1 acre, and then to David's point, maybe where it's a smaller lots, you're not packing in a family of 5, 6 or whatever, in some of the smaller homes, right? Like hopefully but you do have the alley and you can park in the alley. And one thing I'll say about, I understand the concern about the parking on the street too. I do like sometimes where you see where it's not totally stacked on top of each other, but having the parking so it slows down people when they are on the road. I do like that sometimes, but yeah, I know what you're saying. If you got like,
I know one gentleman that's backed out of his driveway, back into his neighbor's car, and parked right behind him. He backs out, finally get out, and hits his neighbor's car, happens twice.
yeah,
This is just, kind of, to say, I could feel anything, but, I mean, the whole deal with the talk about developers, making money, I mean, everybody's in business, you gotta make money. But the bottom line is that for them to make money, they're impeding on our way of life to give as many homes and this land as they can. And to me, when they buy that land, they know what they're paying for. And if they're a developer, they know what's going to cost of building that land. So it's if they think they're not going to make money, then don't buy the land. It's too pricey. So they're putting that on top of us that have lived out here, have moved out here to have a more rural way of life and more space, for them to make money.
And we really feel so sorry for them living in the poor, getting in their $250,000 yellowfin boat to the Bahamas. It reminded me of the farmer. The other farmer says, I lost $1 million on the farm this year. I says, well, bought all my tractors and trucks. Well, we made 6 million, but we were supposed to make 7, so I lost $1 million. I want to go to that school of math.
well, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier. We talked about a schedule here, and there's going to be some planning commission briefings on June 15th, the BOCC workshop, and a lot of this will be kind of an update again of what we've heard. We're going to talk about, here's where I feel like, as I mentioned earlier today, I feel like we've had some good discussions, some compromises and some things, and then there's some other things we're not quite there yet. We are going to have an open house. Right now it's looking at like June 24th, and we talked about having another kind of smaller group meeting too. But I guess one thing I wanted to just kind of touch on is just, again, I think, Nicole, you had the discussion or the handout from today. Any other thoughts on the small group discussion today, or anything we've missed, or anything you guys want to bring up we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Here, her hand up in the back.
Yes, ma'am.
I was going to make a comment on the little, on the proposed site. That's a question. We rented, nightmare. Tiny little houses all squished together. I mean, there's no, yeah, I mean, that to me is, oh my God, I need to live there.
Yeah, that's what we have now.
People like yourself to speak up.
Yeah.
And that's where we could almost, we would rather give up more open space for the bigger lots and not have those smaller lots.
And I feel like I heard from,
That's what we call it cluster.
yeah, I heard from, like Buddy said, yeah, a lot of that's happening today. That's where, I feel like I heard from Steve, whatever that percentage looks like, he felt like there was a mixture of, and these are 40 footers. So what we've talked about getting away from the 40 footers.
Yeah.
So,
He went to 50.
but he went to 50, right? So there's some mixture there.
That's 10 foot in your house.
Now you're thinking, Not your football field, yeah, it's been,
Helping out, that's more good.
So the way I'm reading this is, on the second proposal, politics and the paper lots that are on the first proposal, is that correct, Mike?
that's correct.
So in my mind, I would like to see a kind of a mixture of proposals, get rid of the put more, lots in this, you know, I want to see more of that. I do like, the reason why I like, just like number two, a little bit better, because you did get that more acreage, on the river. But what I don't like is just the thing about cluster inside of that. So if there was a way to combine the two test sites together, so when you do get that, I think the eight lots on the river, and maybe that, they can require, kind of little numbers there.
Mhm.
But I think there's a half.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're spot on. What is that? See, we talked about 5% of the perimeter. It sounds like we want to look at, is it higher than that? And it's a mixture of,
That's right.
I think we were talking about the 50-foot would have the higher percentage. Maybe that's right, but is there a lower percentage in there to come up with that happy medium you're talking about?
And I think that gives us as the races of our community, it gives us that sense that we're still hanging on to our identity as a rural community. Like my son in high school, you know, got home. Now, driving up, looking at some of the others. We're going there. Yes.
I mean, if you did that, if you did like that was talking about, you had the alleyways behind the houses, like where they can park and things like that, would that park be considered an open space? Or does it have to be, the open space, does it have to be a big piece, you know, like in this, number
Oh, on
two, you know what I'm saying?
page 3, where it's, if I'm following you right, it's the middle piece.
Yeah, is that considered open space? Is that like basically an extra drive, you know, an alleyway or something, big like homes or?
Right now, that wouldn't be included in the open space, no.
We talked about, you know, the acre, bigger lots on the perimeter, maybe allow them to use after that as compensation to the open space and the bigger lots.
And they can't do that?
That's, we can still not settle it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the options we come back with it. We talked about this right now, and Michelle knows this. We said in the proposed code that like 10% of your open space requirement could be made up of a large lot. So maybe we look at increasing that percentage up it, you know, and because right now, yeah, in a scenario, it's basically 10%, what's the 40% is, let me see, 102, so that's only 10 acres. You know, that's 10 lots basically. And then you lose your incentive to go any higher than that. So we talked about increasing that. So again, I think
You
we're,
would drill down in that map a little bit more because of the amount of impervious that the house would have.
Exactly.
Not be considered open space, so it would be more than 10.
Yeah.
To actually get it open space.
yep, good point, Jay.
So the thing that really impacts us as residents is the lack of infrastructure, because it changes the nature of some of this conversation. We still want to keep our rural fields to our community. But the fact that we lack infrastructure means, we talked about earlier in the last meeting, there's more cars in the road, more traffic, different things of that nature, for our community. I mean, I don't go all the way down 670, turn right or left, I always say, follow my mom on Palm River, and it takes me 20-something minutes during the day to get to the highway, just to get on it. You know,
But sometimes they, you don't want to go.
you don't. And so, you know, Sunday mornings, if that's for me to hit the highway, it's like 10 minutes. But any other time of the day, you're stuck out here. So it's becoming a cluster, it's becoming a cluster. just to get anywhere out here, and the more communities that we build, and have people really like sardines, the worse it gets for us to get anywhere out here. And then we prepare this emergency, or, we had the other situation where the was off the power line or something happened, and they closed down the road, and you had a parent go to the police and tell them to live somewhere.
And you know, that's a great point, because I'm looking at all this open space and everything, and on how it back up to the housing. Glad there was no house across the street, and yeah, because the county sent a place on fire. And,
Yeah.
you know, it was supposed to be a controlled burn that got out of control. It was supposed to burn 100 acres, well, it burned 650. The PV people only reported 125. When you have, that to me, dangerous, when you have, looking on page 3, that type of open space that backs right up to a house, who's gonna maintain it? Who's gonna do a control burn? Who's gonna maintain all that? That'd be a smaller area, baseball diamond, football fields, things of that nature, that's open spaces to me. Picnic areas for families to go to. And they can utilize that to make these lot sizes a whole lot bigger and go away with everything.
I think that's what we've been talking about, is reducing, I mean, this scenario is showing 40% of the whole project site, so.
That's ridiculous. Well, it's just like a credit, you know, it's not like for them to look at this and say, I've got this wetland, so I can buy this, move them over here.
That's right.
That's the big use also. And like I said, if you go to Cook County or Ramsey County, you go right down here, very, cut across there, to I-75 on Marcus Road. They've already got the lane road with the turn lane, some red light. Everything is in these places before one house is being built. Polk County, the fastest growing
Open space. It
Y'all,
always says
everybody
passive,
knows
so.
what county line road, they have less traffic on county line road. And we do, 672, we have more traffic here, but county line road is already 4 lane, turn lane, red lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything, a public is going up, what is it? We turn lanes and red lights, going in and out before they started construction.
Hey, David, I wanted to hit on that, what you're talking about, Michelle and I were talking about it, so on page 4 on the bottom right, and that's kind of where we were headed. There's this term called conservation subdivisions, where you have, you know, the pretty kind of open space is more passive, and you have more kind of open land between homes. So we're showing an example of that, but it sounds like what we've been hearing more is get rid of it doesn't have to be kind of this continuous open space, so that every home has passive open space. It's more usable space, I think is what I'm hearing from you is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we were headed on that page, that bottom 4, and there's places that have kind of set up they call it conservation subdivision agricultural areas, but it doesn't sound like
I mean, you're not gonna know what they think.
yeah, do actual plantings.
You know, and if you're talking to a little bit larger lots and individual people being
Yeah, smaller.
The leftover areas in RP2 could be used for agricultural production if the homeowners association went that route. So there are certain types of subdivisions that would have very large community gardens, or you might have some of that, open space there, put hay in it. And then you go ahead and and that helps somebody pay for their homeowners fees. All that kind of stuff is things that, certain members of the board want to make sure that agricultural uses are still allowed out here in homeowners association wants to do it. I'm just but I get on the other side of the aisle.
What about, I'm sorry, I got your hand up.
I've been doing it for the last couple of years. Townhouse
complexes? Is anything like that planned to run? Three-story apartment complexes, nice parking and all that, and I would have parked it down together. Did you do these levels from house?
You're hitting on what we were talking about. I don't think we've had total agreement on that, but that was one of the developers or attorneys had mentioned having a townhome, and that would allow you to kind of even go take up less space than what we're showing. Yeah, and then you could use that space.
I mean, before, but.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't heard agreement on that.
Out there don't like the idea of townhouses or affordable housing in this area.
We have enough of that right now.
No affordable housing, you can't have affordable housing, transportation.
Right, yeah.
We're not gonna get transportation, if we get affordable housing, the townhouses look like crap. We don't really want that.
I'd rather live than.
Yeah. And you see that, like, yeah, it's tough, you have to rate it, there are nicer townhomes that have that front looks good, and then, yeah, you have the parking in the back.
Yeah.
If you want, page 2. Item A.
Yes, it looks like the gate is 250 foot setback, so I hope it's just not gonna be open space. We need screening, we need trees, something in there, because that's just,
And that was the point we were trying to make too. You could have 100 feet with good screening, and that's a whole lot better than a football field that's empty, right?
Yes. Yeah.
My thing is, and that's where we were trying to go with, it was almost a kind of a if-or statement, like if you're gonna go 50 feet, you've got to do more trees. If you're gonna do 100 feet, you got to do something moderate. So that's what we were trying to come up with, some kind of formula that got into that.
I'd love to see less open spaces and, bigger lots.
But I'll be honest with you, we had something like that on A and on page 2, and he was talking about the hay or whatever. Yeah, you could do it in something, if you had it close to the road, you could get in and get equipment and stuff.
That's a good point, yeah.
But you couldn't, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to look at you, but I was looking at a picture with the open spaces.
In the middle, yeah.
You know, and you wouldn't.
Well, let's talk about that. I think what Jay and what the board was talking about were some of these communities are doing like small little I mean, nothing big. Yeah, neighborhoods that you.
And they might do that in the center, you know what I'm saying? You have to do that. But okay, we have a cow calf operation, we pay okay, and so a big piece of the property, so I think big equipment, I'm sorry, I think.
You're like, there's no way you're getting into the middle of this development and.
Number one, you're not gonna get anybody to throw a piece of equipment in on a small piece of ground.
To get together on. Usually that's how the aggregate works, is that they end up divvying up what's left of the open space. You don't actually build on your specific property you own. The aggregate is kept in kind with everybody else. Kind of almost like a wall.
Buddy, the way I described that table, it's almost like a sliding scale. Do you think is that helpful to you all? Does that make sense? Like, again, I keep describing it as an if-or statement. Okay, if you're gonna do perimeter lots, you could have a smaller buffer. This is what the range would look like. If you're not gonna do that, here's what you can do: 250-foot buffers. If you're not gonna do a 250-foot buffer, you gotta do such and such, and this amount of trees and screening. And does that make sense for y'all? Or you agree with that?
Okay. It does, but I think it needs to be set down there, that it's required to have something half acre or acre lots also in each development.
Yeah, like it's required percent.
Gotta give away every lot.
Yeah, it's just clear on what they're doing, yeah.
The other thing is you need to, have this open land in front, if like you were talking about for a child or daycare or something like that. If that area didn't even have, you had an open space out there, so it could be developed later. If you got to the point where you commercial building.
Like next to the access road, that's
So
where
you
you.
would have that area that's next to the road, or, so, I mean, everybody outside of it, you need to come there, and something like that.
Yeah.
You have to have that all, and you can decide.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to go back to, yeah, the town, I don't think a lot of the smaller lots with the alleys, some don't, but again, I think there's something there we're gonna have to figure out kind of what that percentage, because that's the way you could really get your larger lots in there. So. Just made it very quiet now.
Yeah, very, probably shut off.
Anything else you guys want to talk about? I mean, we've still got a little bit of time. Was this helpful? Kind of, everything we talked about already, we'll look at some times.
So,
I think it's somebody, I think somebody described option A, B, C and go that way. Let's get those little, those little voting machines out here, those little clickers you can do.
Is there a way to, like we were talking about, there having medium, that's one, that's two, is there a way of vision for us to look at, and discuss in the next program?
Because they were talking about, with Stephen and things, that I want to say it could be
I like that. I can't promise that we'll have that for you at the next meeting. What we were kind of holding on is to get further along and then test that updated code. Does that make sense? I wanted to say that to say, okay, we're going to test what we put together. Yeah, we can get some more thought to that. Is it just taking one and page 1 and 3 right now? I think I've heard a lot already, like, hey, I don't like all that open space, 40%, just, not making it more useful.
And then you can make the lot size.
Maybe there's something we could sketch up and not quite to this detail.
What it does, it gets us off from that, if we like it. and
Yeah.
We can move on to the things that we can really decide.
Yeah. Something we've been talking a lot about is graphic, like the pictures that you all today, this has been a good discussion. Started talking about pictures, like this has been helpful for me and for us. Like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what, so I think more of that too in the next meeting would be good. We can bring more of that. That's good. Have we worried about Alamo? Any other questions? I appreciate it.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Y'all enjoy the rest of your weekend. There you go.
Get your name out there.
We're extension, you guys. Yeah. I didn't get your take. I think this is tough because this is a really tight schedule. So I feel like we're going to be
Yeah, usually it's Melissa and Adam that kind of set these dates.
almost.